Good evening, night owls. You're tuned into Midnight Radio Horror, your quiet companion through the rain and the dark. Tonight's story comes from a man who moved into an old apartment complex, one that's far too quiet for comfort. He thought the worst thing about his new place would be the leaky pipes or creaky floors. But sometimes, silence hides something worse, something listening. Before we begin, grab your blanket, dim the lights, and tell us where you're listening from in the comments. And remember, if you enjoy these stories, don't forget to like and subscribe for more nightly chills. Now, let's begin.
I moved into 7B of the Alder Apartments on a Sunday afternoon. Cheap old building, but the rent was low and I was desperate. The landlord, Mr. Patel, handed me the keys with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Welcome home," he said. "You'll find it's quiet here." He wasn't kidding. After I unpacked, I realized I could hear everything. My footsteps, the fridge hum, even my own heartbeat when I lay down. No traffic, no neighbors arguing. Nothing. Just silence. That first night, I went to bed around midnight. But at exactly 12:37 a.m., I heard footsteps above me. Slow, steady pacing. Back and forth. The ceiling creaked like old wood under heavy boots. I didn't think much of it. Someone moving furniture, maybe. But when I asked Patel about it the next morning, his expression froze. "There's no one above you," he said flatly. "The top floor's been closed for years. Fire damage." I laughed, but he didn't. "Seriously?" I asked. "Then who was walking around last night?" He just shook his head. "Old buildings make noise. Don't worry about it." That night I couldn't sleep. I left the light on and waited. 12:37 a.m. Right on time. Thump, thump, thump. The footsteps were heavier this time. Slower. Almost dragging. I stared at the ceiling, heart pounding, trying to pinpoint the direction. The sound stopped directly above my bed. And then 3 knocks. Top, top, top. I shot upright. The knocks came again, perfectly spaced. I looked up and whispered, "Hello." Silence. Then a faint creak, as if someone leaned down to listen. The next morning, I climbed the stairs to the top floor. The door to the upper hall was padlocked and covered in old warning tape. I pressed my ear against it. Nothing but a low, hollow hum. But just as I turned to leave, thump, something hit the door from the other side. I sprinted downstairs, locked my door, and didn't move for the rest of the day. When night fell, I tried drowning the sounds with music, but the footsteps began again, in rhythm with the beat, as if whoever was up there was mocking me. I unplugged everything and sat in silence. Then I heard it, a whisper, faint but real. "You hear me now." I froze. The voice came from directly above my ceiling fan, and then the lights flickered once, twice before going dark. The last thing I heard before everything went black was a quiet laugh. Not loud, not menacing, just wrong, like it was inside my apartment. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the couch until dawn, lights flickering above me every few minutes. Every time I looked up, I half expected to see something staring down through the ceiling fan blades. When the sun finally rose, I convinced myself I'd imagined it. Stress, lack of sleep. The building was old, right? Pipes expand, floors creak, wires hum. That's all. By afternoon, I almost believed it, until I found the note. It was slipped under my door. A single sheet of lined paper, folded twice. No envelope. The handwriting was shaky, almost frantic. It read, "Stop talking to her. She listens through the walls." That was it. No signature. No explanation. I stared at it, my stomach twisting. I hadn't talked to anyone, not since moving in. I went straight to the landlord's office. Mr. Patel wasn't there. The door was open, the lights off, a faint smell of mold hanging in the air. The calendar on the wall still showed August 2021. I went back to my apartment, locked the door, and decided to record what was happening. I pulled out my phone, hit record, and set it on the nightstand. If I could catch the noises, maybe I'd have proof for the landlord or maybe the police. Midnight came.
12:37 Uhr nachts.
Right on schedule. The footsteps started again. slow and deliberate. Back and forth, back and forth. Then silence. For a long moment, nothing. And then my phone vibrated. An unknown number. No caller ID. I hesitated, then answered. Hello. Static. Then a voice, faint and hollow. Don't go upstairs. I froze. Who is this? Static again. Then, you'll see her soon. The line went dead. I looked at the ceiling. The footsteps resumed, but now they were running. Heavy, fast, pounding footsteps racing from one end of the room to the other, shaking the ceiling dust loose. I grabbed my phone, turned on the flashlight, and pointed it up. The ceiling fan was spinning, slowly, even though the switch was off. And then, clear as day, a single knock came from inside the vent on the far wall. I stepped closer, trembling. The vent cover was slightly bent, like someone had pried it open from the inside. When I crouched down, I heard it. A voice, soft, whispering through the metal. Help me. It was a woman's voice, fragile, desperate. I stammered, Who are you? The voice replied, She's pretending to be me. Then silence. A low creak echoed through the ceiling, and the light above me went out. I turned toward the window, trying to catch my breath. In the glass reflection, I could see my whole room behind me, faintly lit by my phone's glow. And for half a second, there was a figure standing in the corner, tall, still, head tilted, watching. When I spun around, nothing, just empty air and my pulse hammering in my ears. You picked to bake. I didn't care about rent or the deposit. I just needed to get out. I reached the front door and twisted the lock. It wouldn't budge. I pulled harder, nothing. The knob felt ice cold. Then the voice came again, right behind me. Leaving so soon? I turned. No one there, but the ceiling above the doorway cracked. Plaster rained down, and from the hole that split open, something pale hung down. A hand. Long fingers. Gray skin. Nails like broken glass. Clawed at the air, slow and twitching. I stumbled backward, slamming into the wall. Then, as suddenly as it appeared, the hand withdrew. Silence again. The hole remained, gaping, like a wound in the ceiling. I sat there until dawn, shaking. When morning came, the hole was gone. The ceiling looked perfectly smooth, as if nothing had ever happened. But when I checked my phone recording from the night before, my blood went cold. The entire 3-hour clip was filled with faint breathing sounds. Not mine, not human. And in the very last second, right before it cut off, a woman's whisper, You're in my room now. I didn't go to work the next day. Couldn't. Every time I looked at the ceiling, I half expected that pale hand to push through again. The hole was gone, the plaster smooth, but I knew it had been there. I had the video, the breathing, the whisper. By noon, I'd packed everything I could carry. I was done with Alder Apartments, but when I grabbed my keys and wallet, I saw something that made my blood run cold. The note, the one that said, Stop talking to her. It was back on the floor. Only now, there was new writing beneath it, written in fresh, dark ink. You're making her angry. That was enough. I threw open the door and stormed to the stairwell, heading straight for the locked top floor. I didn't care anymore. I had to know what was up there, who was walking, who was whispering, who was pretending. The padlock on the upstairs door was still there, covered in dust. But when I touched it, it clicked open like it had never been locked. The air inside was colder, heavier. It smelled like wet cement and rot. I turned on my phone flashlight and stepped inside. The hallway stretched out in both directions, doors lining each side. Every door had a faded number plate, 8A, 8B, 8C, all the way down to 8H. The floorboards were warped, stained dark in places like old water damage. I walked slowly, calling out, Hello! No response, just the faint sound of dripping water somewhere far away. Then I saw it, one door slightly open. 8F, a sliver of darkness peering through. Pushed it open. Inside was a room almost identical to mine. Same layout, same wallpaper, same cracks in the ceiling. But there was furniture covered in white sheets, all yellowed with age. In the corner stood an old radio, unplugged, but softly hissing static. I stepped closer. The sound grew clearer. Not just static, but faint whispers beneath it. I leaned in, trying to catch the words. "Don't let her see you." I jerked back, heart racing. The radio wasn't plugged in, but it knew I was there. Something moved behind me. A small scrape, like a shoe brushing wood. I spun around, flashlight trembling in my hand. The door had closed, and behind it, faintly visible in the reflection of my phone screen, was the outline of a woman standing in the corner. Her head was lowered, her hair long and tangled, soaking wet. I could hear the sound of water dripping from her hair, from her hands. I whispered, "Who are you?" She didn't move, but the radio hissed louder, almost frantic, and the voice came again, this time through the static. "She's wearing my face." The woman raised her head. Her skin was pale and swollen, her eyes white and gleaming. And yes, she was wearing someone else's face. The edges didn't fit. The skin around the jaw looked torn, stitched roughly into place. She opened her mouth, but the sound that came out wasn't human. A distorted screech of static, the same tone as the radio, loud enough to make my ears bleed. I stumbled backward, tripping over the sheets. The flashlight spun across the floor, beam flickering over the walls, revealing words scrawled in black marker across the wallpaper. "Be quiet. She listens. She lives in the walls. She wears what she finds." The static scream stopped. When I looked up, the woman was gone. The room was empty except for the radio, now silent. I turned to leave, but the door wouldn't open. I pulled and kicked, but it was like something on the other side was holding it shut. Then a whisper came through the keyhole, low and familiar. My own voice. "Don't go downstairs." I froze. The whisper came again, mimicking my tone perfectly. "You'll bring her with you." I turned slowly toward the mirror hanging above the dresser. My reflection smiled, but I didn't. The reflection tilted its head, just slightly, as the glass began to ripple, like water disturbed by a stone. And through the distortion, I could see her, the woman standing inside the mirror, reaching toward the other side. Her hand pressed against the glass. Cracks formed around it. That was when I ran. The door finally gave way, slamming open as I bolted into the hallway. The air behind me buzzed with static. Lights flickering like a storm was building inside the walls. I didn't stop until I reached the stairwell, gasping for breath. But when I looked down, the stairs didn't end. They spiraled endlessly, floor after floor after floor, all labeled 7B. My apartment number. Each door down there was mine, each one slightly open. And from every single one, I could hear it. Thump, thump, thump. Footsteps. Above me. Below me. Everywhere. And then, in the dark far below, I saw her face. Pale, stretched, smiling. She whispered, "You can move out, but I'm still upstairs." I don't remember running. One moment I was staring down that endless stairwell, the next I was outside, or what looked like outside. My chest burned, my ears rang, and the cold night air felt wrong, like it was heavier somehow. Alder Apartments stood behind me, tall and silent. No lights in the windows, no sound but the faint hum of static that seemed to seep from the bricks themselves. I stumbled down the street, gasping for breath. Everything looked familiar, but off. The buildings across the road were there, but their windows were black, their signs blank. The air had a metallic taste. The streetlights flickered in perfect rhythm with my heartbeat. I pulled out my phone. No signal. No Wi-Fi. No time displayed, just a blank, glowing screen. I started walking. Half a block down, I saw a man standing on the corner. He was dressed like any normal person. Hoodie, jeans, a backpack. But he wasn't moving, just staring straight ahead. "Hey," I called. "Do you know what's going on here?" He didn't respond. I got closer. That's when I saw it. His face wasn't facing me. His body was turned the other way, twisted completely around. I stumbled back, while rising in my throat. His jaw opened slowly, unnaturally, and a soft, familiar whisper came out. "You shouldn't have gone upstairs." I turned and ran. The street stretched longer the farther I moved, looping back on itself until I realized I was passing the same bus stop over and over. Same torn poster, same trash can, same flickering light. When I stopped, out of breath, the building beside me caught my eye. Alder Apartments. No matter where I went, I always ended up right back there. I tried the front door, screaming, banging, pulling, and it swung open on its own. Inside, the lobby was darker than before, the wallpaper peeling away in long strips. The air smelled like wet dirt. The floor glistened with something that looked like water but wasn't. And the silence, it was worse now. It wasn't the silence of emptiness. It was the silence of listening. Please, I whispered, just let me leave. Somewhere above me, a door creaked open. Footsteps again. Slow, dragging, coming down the stairs this time. I pressed myself against the wall, staring at the stairwell. A shape appeared at the landing, tall, thin, hair matted to one side, wearing clothes that looked exactly like mine. I stepped into the light. It was me. Same jacket, same jeans, same terrified expression. Except the eyes. They were blank, white, and endless. My voice came out of its mouth, slow and echoing, distorted like a recording played backward. She's not upstairs anymore. I backed away, followed, step for step, mimicking every movement I made until we were standing face to face. Then it smiled. A slow, broken smile that stretched too far. And from behind it, I saw her, the woman, her body dripping, her face pale beneath that sewn-on skin, her head tilted as if curious, watching me. Please, I said, what do you want? The doppelganger turned its head toward her. She leaned forward, whispering into its ear. It nodded. Then it reached out, its hand cold and damp, and touched my chest. Instantly, my vision blurred. The hallway around me rippled like heat haze. The walls twisted, stretching into long corridors that shouldn't exist. Then I was standing in my apartment again. 7B. Everything looked normal. The light was on, the fridge humming, the morning sun spilling through the window. Had I dreamt it? Hallucinated the whole thing? I grabbed my phone. The date said March 15th. I moved in on January 4th. 2 months gone. Before I could process it, there was a knock at my door. 3 sharp knocks. Talk, talk, talk. I froze. Then, a voice from the other side. Soft, calm, familiar. E, I'm your new neighbor. Just moved in upstairs. My heart stopped. I didn't open the door. I just stood there, shaking, staring at it. Another knock, louder this time. You hear me, right? I backed away, step by step, until I was pressed against the opposite wall. Then the voice whispered, right against the wood, as if her lips were touching it. I left something for you. The footsteps moved away, up the stairs. For a long moment, I couldn't move. Then I forced myself to open the door. A single object lay on the floor, a folded sheet of paper. I picked it up with trembling hands. One line written in the same frantic handwriting as before. You're upstairs now. I looked up at the ceiling. The light flickered, and from above, faint but clear, came my own voice whispering. You hear me walking, don't you? The knocking stopped days ago, or maybe weeks. I don't really know anymore. Time doesn't flow normally in this place. It just loops like an old tape rewinding and replaying the same seconds. At least that's how it feels from up here. Yes, I said up here, because I'm not in 7B anymore. I'm above it. At first, I thought I'd escaped, that somehow I'd survived the night, that maybe I'd just fallen asleep and woken up in someone else's apartment. But when I looked out the window, I saw the same view I always did. The same crooked streetlight, the same dead tree, except this time the angle was different. I was looking down on it. The apartment looks almost identical. Same layout, same furniture, but everything feels heavier, slower. Every sound carries, echoing too long, like the air is thicker up here. And sometimes, when I'm quiet enough, I can hear him, the other me, the one living below. He moves the same way I used to. I hear him breathing when he lies awake at night. I hear his footsteps pacing the kitchen floor when the power flickers. But the strange thing is, he never looks up. Not once. Maybe he can't. Maybe I'm not supposed to exist anymore. Sometimes I catch myself moving in rhythm with him, step for step. When he sits, I sit. When he eats, I eat. Though there's nothing here but dust and the faint smell of mold. It's like something is making sure I mirror him. Like I'm a reflection behind the ceiling. And when he talks, the words echo up through the floorboards a few seconds later. Like the world is lagging. 2 nights ago, I heard him crying. His voice cracked the way mine used to. Desperate, terrified. He said, "Please, I just wanted to stop." And before I could stop myself, I answered, "I can't help you." He froze. I heard the floorboards creak as he looked up. And then, for the first time since I got trapped up here, I heard him whisper back, "Who's there?" I didn't mean to speak. I don't think I was the one who did. Something moved through me. That same coldness I'd felt before. That static hum in my ears. I tried to stay quiet after that. But the building doesn't like silence. When I stop moving, I start to hear it. Faint whispers crawling through the walls. The woman, the one who wore the face, she talks to me now. She says, "You belong here. Someone has to walk the floors." When I ask what she means, she laughs softly. They hear the noise and think it's the house settling, but it's us. It's always been us. Last night, the power flickered again. I saw the reflection of my apartment in the window, only it wasn't mine. The light was coming from below, my old place. The other me was standing in the center of the room, staring straight up at the ceiling, right where I was standing, and I could see him, clear as day, through the warped glass between us. He whispered something I couldn't hear, so I leaned closer to the floorboards, pressing my ear against them. That's when I realized he was recording. He had his phone out just like I did before, trying to catch the sounds, trying to prove I was real. And then I heard it, my own voice echoing through his phone. It said, "You hear me walking, don't you?" That's when I understood. The footsteps weren't a haunting. They were a warning. Someone always ends up upstairs. Someone always ends up walking. Someone always becomes the noise. I think the building needs it, like it feeds on the loop, keeping the pattern alive. The tenant below hears the one above, loses their mind, moves out or disappears, and then takes their place. Alder Apartments isn't haunted by ghosts. It's haunted by echoes. And now, I'm one of them. The woman comes less often now. But when she does, she crawls through the ceiling vents, whispering names. She says the next tenant is coming soon. A new one. A woman this time. She said her name softly, like a secret. Clara. Tonight. I can already hear boxes dragging on the floor below me, furniture being moved, laughter, the sound of someone settling in. And when the clock hits 12:37 a.m., the floorboards below will creak for the first time. Thump, thump, thump. I'll start walking, and she'll hear me, and the cycle will start again. When I first moved into 7B, I thought I'd finally caught a break. Cheap rent, quiet neighborhood, and a landlord who didn't care about much besides getting the deposit. It wasn't perfect. The walls were old, the lights buzzed, but I could finally breathe. That first night, I slept like a rock. At least, until 12:37 a.m. Thump, thump, thump. Footsteps, right above me. I thought it was normal, maybe another tenant moving in late. But when I asked Mr. Patel the next morning, he just stared at me, blank-faced. "Top floor's closed," he said. "Fire damage years ago." I laughed, waiting for the punchline. He didn't smile. That's when I noticed his hands trembling. He looked like he wanted to say more, but stopped himself. "Best to ignore it," he muttered, "or it won't stop." That night, I left the light on. I kept glancing at the ceiling, waiting. Nothing. Until 12:37 again. The footsteps started slow, steady, like someone pacing. I held my breath and listened. The rhythm was strange, too deliberate, too heavy. Then 3 sharp knocks above my bed. Top, top, top. My skin went cold. I whispered, "Hello," and to my horror, there was an answer. Don't listen to her. It was a man's voice, weak, echoing through the plaster. I froze. Who's there? Silence. Then, a faint scraping sound, like fingernails dragging across the ceiling. And a whisper, softer this time. She hears everything. I didn't sleep after that. Over the next few nights, it got worse. The lights flickered. My phone kept glitching. Random bursts of static when I tried to record the sounds. And then I started finding notes slipped under my door. The first said, "Don't go upstairs." The second, "She wants your face." I tried to convince myself it was a prank. Maybe one of the neighbors trying to scare me. But I never saw anyone in the hall. The mailboxes were empty except for mine. By the fifth night, I'd had enough. I called the police. 2 officers came by, checked the place out. One of them, a tall guy with tired eyes, asked where I was hearing the noise. "Above me," I said. "There's someone walking up there." He looked at his partner, then back at me. "Ma'am, there is no upstairs." I didn't understand. "What are you talking about? There's a whole floor above this one." He shook his head. "The top floor was sealed off after the fire in 2021. It's just ceiling and insulation above you now. They left after 10 minutes. No report. No answers." But that night, the footsteps came again. And for the first time, I heard crying. Soft, broken sobs. A man's voice. I pressed my hand against the ceiling. "Hello? Are you okay?" The crying stopped. Then a whisper. "She's behind you." I turned nothing. The apartment was still. Then I heard the doorknob rattle. Once, twice. I backed away slowly. And then something knocked from the inside of the closet. 3 sharp knocks. I ran to the door, but before I could unlock it, a voice came from behind me. The same man's voice as before, trembling but urgent. "She's wearing me. Please, don't open the door." I froze. A shadow slid under the crack of the closet door, thin, long, and moving like smoke. It stretched across the floor toward my feet. The light flickered. I reached for the switch, but the bulb burst, showering sparks. The room went black, and in that darkness, I heard breathing. Not mine. Slow. Heavy. Then, I backed away until my hand brushed the doorknob. Cold, slick, like something had been touching it from the other side. Then a whisper, right in my ear. "Your turn to walk." Everything went silent. When I turned on my phone flashlight, the closet door was open. Inside, there was only one thing. A small, crumpled piece of paper pinned to the wall with a rusted nail. It read, "She's coming down." The night was thick, heavy with the smell of damp wood and something metallic. Rain tapped faintly against my window, but it felt distant, almost as if it were happening somewhere else. I sat on the edge of the bed, the folded note trembling in my hand. "She's coming down." I didn't know what it meant. Who was she? The woman? Or the man? Or something else? I tried to calm myself. Maybe it was the building. Maybe it was my imagination. I told myself I needed to see to understand. At exactly 12:37 a.m., I heard them. Footsteps. Soft at first, then deliberate, pacing across the ceiling. They weren't fast, not threatening, but precise, almost intentional. I followed the sound to the hallway. My heart hammered so loudly I thought it would give me away. Then I noticed it, the closet door, slightly ajar. I had ignored it all night, avoided it. But tonight, something compelled me to look. Inside, nothing at first, just shadows stretching across the walls, warped by my flashlight. Then I saw it. A figure crouched in the corner, wet hair sticking to a pale face. She wasn't moving like a human. Her body was rigid, unnatural, but her eyes were wide, filled with panic, like she was trying to get my attention. "She's trapped," a voice whispered behind me. My own voice, but hoarse, trembling. "He's full." The hallway was empty, no one there. I turned back. The woman in the closet was gone. Then I heard it, a soft scraping along the ceiling, footsteps moving toward the bedroom. Not me, but something else. I realized then, the footsteps weren't trying to scare me. They were leading me somewhere. I followed them, crawling on my hands and knees, listening to each creak, each tap. They led me to the apartment door. I paused. A soft whimper came through the keyhole. "Please," it said. "Help me." I hesitated, then opened the door. The hallway stretched before me, familiar yet wrong. The ceiling above was warped, bending like liquid. Each apartment number flickered in the dim light. 7B. 7B again. And again. Endless repetitions. Then I saw her. The woman, pale and soaked, face torn and stitched. But she didn't move toward me. She crouched, cornered in front of one of the repeating doors, staring down at the floor. From the ceiling, the footsteps started again, soft, almost gentle, pacing in a pattern. Top, top, perse, top. And then I understood. They weren't haunting me. They weren't trying to harm me. They were warning me of the thing that lives inside the walls of Alder Apartments. The thing that wears faces, mimics voices, feeds on fear, and traps souls upstairs, turning them into echoes. The footsteps led me closer. I knelt down, listening to each tap, each creak. I reached toward the woman. She can't escape on her own. A whisper echoed from the ceiling. My own voice again, trembling, desperate. You have to help her. I took her hand. Cold. Limp. Alive but barely. Suddenly, the hallway shifted. The repeating doors twisted into one continuous wall. The woman was pressed against it. Pulled her toward me. Behind the wall, I heard a rasping breath. A voice that wasn't hers, but sounded like mine. You shouldn't have found me. And then the footsteps began to pound, heavy, deliberate, coming down from above. Faster, closer. The wall groaned. Plaster fell in chunks. The air smelled of damp earth and decay. I yanked the woman through the warped hallway. The footsteps chased us, echoing endlessly. I felt a hand brush my shoulder. Not hers. Cold, wet, too long. I ran. I reached a door that looked normal, like it belonged in the real world. I opened it. Light spilled in. And then I was outside. Rain poured down, soaking me. The building behind me looked abandoned, lifeless. The woman I dragged behind me collapsed. Alive, shivering. Who are you? She whispered. I didn't know. I only knew one thing. Alder Apartments wasn't done yet. And the footsteps, the echoes, they were waiting for the next tenant. This is where the horror deepens with the past victim's story. The rain soaked us to the bone, but I didn't care. The woman, Clara, as she called herself, clung to me, trembling. We stayed on the street outside Alder Apartments, staring at the building. It loomed like a dark monolith, silent now. Too quiet. She shivered and whispered, You said it was abandoned, right? That no one's up there. I nodded. It's complicated. There's something living in the walls. Something that wears faces, mimics voices, and traps people upstairs. It uses footsteps to warn or lure them. Clara's eyes widened. Footsteps. I explained everything, the notes, the whispered warnings, the endless loops of 7B, the shadows in the closet. Every detail. When I finished, she said, We need to know why. There has to be a reason it's doing this. I didn't answer. I didn't want to, but she was right. There had to be a history behind this horror. We spent the next day researching. At the local library, we dug through old newspapers, building permits, fire reports, anything mentioning Alder Apartments. What we found made my stomach twist. The building had a long, dark history. A fire in 2021 had destroyed the top floor. Officially, it was sealed. No one lived there since. But the building was older than that, nearly 80 years. There were reports dating back to the 1950s. Tenants disappearing, unexplained deaths, whispers of the upstairs. One particularly chilling report from 1963 described a tenant who claimed someone was walking above him, copying my life. He disappeared within a week. The police found his apartment empty, but strange footprints were pressed into the ceiling plaster. Another report, 1977. A young woman claimed she was being followed by footsteps that echoed her own. Neighbors heard screams for days, but when police arrived, the apartment was empty. Her body was never found. And again in 1999, A man moved in on January 4th. He complained about a neighbor upstairs. The landlord assured him there was no one there. He vanished by March 15th. No trace, except a series of crumpled notes found under his door. Stop talking to her. You're upstairs now. Clara gasped. It's the same pattern. I nodded. Every tenant upstairs becomes the next echo. Every time someone new moves in, the cycle starts again. She shivered. Then, what we experienced. It's been happening for decades. I swallowed hard. It's not just the fire. The fire may have made it stronger. The entity, it feeds on fear, on attention. It can trap anyone who listens too closely to the footsteps. Clara's hands shook. But what about the woman in the closet? The one you saved? I don't know, I admitted. She was trapped inside, maybe one of the previous echoes. The footsteps, they were trying to guide me to her. Her eyes widened. So the footsteps aren't just warnings. They're guides. I nodded slowly. Yes, if you listen carefully, if you follow them instead of ignoring them, you might survive. That night, we returned to Alder Apartments. I was hesitant, but Clara insisted. She wanted answers. She wanted to understand. Inside, the building smelled of mold and wet plaster. The air was heavier, colder. Every step we took echoed unnaturally. The hallway looked the same, warped, endless, repeating. But the moment we entered, the footsteps started. Top, person, top. Clara froze. They're coming from above me. I nodded. Don't panic. Follow them. Step where they step. We moved carefully, mirroring the rhythm. The floor creaked under our weight, responding to the invisible presence above. Shadows flickered across the walls. At the end of the hall, we found the closet, the same one I had opened before. The door was ajar. Inside, nothing, except for one object on the floor. A stack of papers, yellowed with age. Notes from previous tenants. Hundreds of them spanning decades. Every message scratched in frantic handwriting. Some wet with mold. Some nearly illegible. Stop listening. Don't follow the steps. She wears my face. I'm upstairs now, Clara whispered. All these people trapped, and now it's us. I nodded grimly. But maybe we can break the cycle. The footsteps grew louder, approaching from above. Top, person, top. We stood still, listening. The rhythm told a story, not of harm, but of fear, of warning. It guided us. We followed it, step by step, through the warped hallway. And at the end, we saw it. A faint outline behind the ceiling vent. Pale, soaked, and trembling. The woman, the one I had saved before. She stared at us, eyes wide with relief and terror. She's guiding us, I whispered. Clara nodded. We have to follow her. The footsteps changed, faster, urgent. Not chasing, but leading. We stepped carefully, listening, moving with the rhythm of decades of echoes, hoping, praying, that this time we wouldn't become part of the cycle. Because Alder Apartments doesn't forget. It doesn't release its tenants. It just waits for someone brave or foolish enough to listen. The stack of notes trembled under Clara's fingers as we stepped back into the hallway. The footsteps above us had shifted, faster now, but deliberate, guiding us. Top, person, top. This way, I whispered. Follow the rhythm. Don't stray. The hallway warped around us, stretching and twisting as if the building itself were alive. The walls pulsed, shadows slithering across the peeling wallpaper. Every step felt wrong, like walking through water, yet there was no wetness. The ceiling stretched and compressed, the lights flickering in sync with our heartbeat. Clara gripped my arm. It's trying to trap us. I know, I said, but the footsteps, they're still guiding us. We have to trust them. We moved slowly, step by step, following the pattern. The rhythm grew louder, echoing through the floorboards. Top, person, top. It felt almost like it was communicating, a code we were finally beginning to understand. At the end of the hallway, a staircase descended. Not the one I'd used before, but another impossibly narrow, spiraling downward, fading into darkness. The footsteps led us to it. We paused. I could feel the presence above us. The air pulsed with it. The static hum was deafening. Clara whispered, trembling, "What if it's a trap?" I swallowed hard. "Then we'll fall together. But we have to go." Step by step, we descended. The stairs felt endless. Each step echoed, vibrating through the walls. The building seemed to resist, shifting beneath us. The shadows grew taller, following our every movement. And then, the laughter, soft at first, like wind through the vents, then louder, colder, dripping with malice. "She's coming," Clara whispered. The staircase widened into a narrow hallway, one we hadn't seen before. The walls were covered with mirrors, reflecting infinite versions of ourselves. Each reflection moved slightly out of sync, twisted, pale, and wet. The footsteps didn't just echo now. They multiplied, surrounding us from every reflection, every angle. We reached the last mirror at the end of the hall. The footsteps stopped. Silence. And then a whisper from the mirror. "You can't leave." I froze. Clara gripped my arm tighter. The mirror rippled like water, and through it I saw the woman. Pale, soaked, stitched face standing on the other side. But she wasn't moving toward us. She was trapped, just like all the others. Her eyes pleaded with us. "Follow the steps," I said to Clara. The mirror cracked. The shadows behind it shifted. Then the footsteps resumed, slower, deliberate. "Top, top, person, top." We moved with them, pressing our hands against the mirrored walls, listening to the rhythm. It guided us to a door at the far end. The door looked ordinary, plain wood, metal handle. I hesitated. "This is it. Our exit, maybe." Clara nodded, swallowing. "Let's go." We turned the handle. The door opened. Lights filled in warm, real light. Sunlight, outside air. Rain falling softly. We stepped through. The door slammed behind us. We were outside. The street stretched before us, normal, quiet. Alder Apartments loomed behind, silent, still. But when I looked back, it was wrong. The building's top floor was open, windows black and empty, shifting like liquid. A figure leaned out from one of them. Tall, pale, hair wet, stitched face glinting in the dim light. And from inside the top floor, I could hear it, the footsteps. "Top, top, person, top." They were still moving, waiting, watching. I pulled Clara away, sprinting down the street. The city around us looked normal, but the air hummed faintly with static, like the building was reaching for us. We didn't stop until we reached the nearest 24-hour diner. Inside, the neon lights buzzed. Warm coffee steam filled the air. Real, living people sat at tables. For the first time in days, I could breathe. Clara looked at me, pale and trembling. "Do you think it's over?" I shook my head. "I don't know. Alder Apartments doesn't let anyone go completely, but maybe we survive. This time." Outside, through the diner window, I saw the building again. Silent now, still, waiting, and somewhere deep inside, I could almost hear it, soft, deliberate, tap, tap, pause, tap. The footsteps will never stop. They just wait, and one day, they'll find the next tenant. If you want, I can continue with part 10, where Clara and the narrator start investigating the building's past tenants in detail, learning about the first victim, and uncovering a way that might permanently break the cycle. Days passed, but neither Clara nor I could sleep properly. The memory of Alder Apartments haunted every corner of our minds. Every time the wind rattled a window or a floorboard creaked in our own apartments, I imagined the footsteps. Tap, tap, pause, tap. We decided to dig deeper. If we wanted to truly survive, we had to understand the building's history and the source of the echoes. We returned to the library, poring over old newspapers, fire records, and city archives. And then we found something new, something that changed everything. The earliest report of the building didn't start in the 1950s, as we had thought. It went back to 1942. A man named Elias Moreau had built the top floor as a personal apartment. He was a recluse, obsessed with auditory experiments. He believed that human consciousness could be trapped and transmitted through sound patterns, footsteps, echoes, rhythmic tapping. According to the report, Moreau's tenants had started disappearing almost immediately after he moved in. Witnesses claimed they heard footsteps above them, but the top floor was supposedly empty. No one dared check. Moreau died under mysterious circumstances in 1946. They found him in the sealed attic, but his body was grotesquely malformed, as if he had been stitched into the walls themselves. The report hinted at something worse. Moreau had been experimenting with echo consciousness, transferring awareness between floors, from body to body. He believed that if he could map the rhythm of footsteps perfectly, he could trap souls in the building indefinitely. Clara stared at me wide-eyed. It's why the building traps people. The footsteps. They're the patterns he left behind. I nodded grimly. Everything we experienced, the reflections, the mirrors, the echoes, it's all part of his experiment. We didn't just hear the footsteps. We became part of them. The deeper we dug, the more we realized the horror of it. Every previous tenant, every note left behind, every whispered warning. It was all part of a centuries-old cycle, maintained by the building itself and the echoes of Elias Moreau. And the woman in the closet? Clara asked quietly. She was a previous echo, I said. Someone who survived long enough to guide us, but she's still trapped between the walls and the ceiling. Her consciousness is part of the building now. She can't leave, but she can warn. We spent the next night at Clara's apartment planning. She insisted we return, not to confront the building, but to find the woman and free her. We gathered recording devices, lights, and notebooks. We traced the exact pattern of footsteps I had memorized, the rhythm that had saved us before. Back at Alder Apartments, the hallway stretched before us like a living nightmare. Top, top, perse, top. The rhythm echoed perfectly. I whispered it to Clara. She mimicked it step by step. The building seemed to resist, warping and twisting, but we pressed on, following the rhythm through the warped hallways. Finally, we reached the top floor, sealed, black, silent. The air hummed with static. Shadows stretched unnaturally, reaching for us. And then, in the corner, we saw her, the woman. She was crouched, pale, soaked, stitched face barely recognizable. Her eyes met ours. Relief flickered across them. She can hear you, I whispered. Clara stepped forward, holding out her hand. We're here to help you. The woman hesitated. Then, slowly, she began to rise. The ceiling above trembled. The static hummed louder. Top, top, perse, top. I realized that to free her, we'd have to replicate the rhythm perfectly. Every step, every pause, every tap. One misstep, and we'd become part of the building, trapped forever. We started moving, step by step. Top, top, perse, top. The building shuddered, walls groaning, shadows twisting violently. The woman followed, mirroring our steps. And then, the static peaked. A scream, not human, not fully echoing, but distorted, horrifying. And then silence. When I opened my eyes, the building was quiet. The top floor collapsed behind us, the hallway no longer warped. The woman, finally free, stepped down beside us. Her eyes were human again, alive. She whispered, trembling, "Thank you." We didn't wait. We left Alder Apartments that night, and this time we didn't look back. But in the dead of night, when the wind rattles a window or a floorboard creaks, I still hear it faintly. Tap, tap, pause, tap. And I know the echoes never truly die. After that night, Clara and I never returned to Alder Apartments. But the memory of the building, the echoes, and the pale woman haunted us. We knew that even though she was free, the building wasn't entirely destroyed. Something lingered in the walls, in the ceiling, in the rhythm of the footsteps. We spent the next few weeks documenting everything. The building's history, Moreau's experiments, the notes of past tenants, everything we could find. We compiled them into a thick folder, cross-referencing dates, names, and incidents. The pattern was clear. The echoes had been growing stronger over the decades, feeding on fear, curiosity, and the attention of those who entered the building. One evening, as we sat in Clara's apartment reviewing our notes, I heard a faint sound. Top, top. I froze. My heart raced. Clara looked at me, eyes wide. Do you hear it? I nodded. It's coming from outside. We ran to the window. Across the street, Alder Apartments sat dark and silent, but the sound persisted, faint, rhythmic. Top, top. I realized then that freeing the woman hadn't destroyed the building. It had only changed the rhythm. The echoes were dormant, but they were still there, waiting. Clara grabbed my arm. Do you think it's trying to find someone else? I swallowed hard. Yes, and if it can't find a tenant, it might reach for someone who knows its rhythm. We decided to test it. We set up recording equipment, motion sensors, and microphones outside the building. The next night, the footsteps began again. Louder this time, more deliberate. Top, top. Clara followed the rhythm with a metronome. I noted every deviation, every pattern change. It was as if the building were learning, adjusting to our actions. And then we saw it. A shadow moving behind a top-floor window. Pale, thin, stitched face. Not the woman we freed, something else. New. She's different, Clara whispered. The footsteps quickened, vibrating through the walls and into the street. Top. They weren't just warnings anymore. They were testing us, measuring our reactions. We realized that Alder Apartments wasn't just haunted, it was intelligent. A living entity, feeding on the echoes of its victims, waiting for the right rhythm to ensnare its next prey. We recorded everything, planning to warn the city, the neighbors, anyone who might enter. But deep down, I knew it wouldn't stop. The building waits. It listens. It adapts. And eventually, someone will make a mistake, follow the rhythm incorrectly, and become the next echo. Clara and I left the recordings with the library and local archives, a warning in plain sight, hoping someone would understand. That night, when the city slept, I lay in bed and heard it again. Tap, tap, pause tap. I don't know if it's for me. I don't know if it's for Clara. All I know is that the echoes never die. They just wait for the next tenant to walk upstairs. Months passed. Clara and I tried to live normal lives, but the rhythm never left me. Every time I stepped on a creaking floorboard, every time I heard distant tapping in an empty street, I flinched. Top. We began receiving anonymous messages. At first, small notes slipped under our doors. Then emails, photos of empty hallways, of ceilings with faint, wet footprints, of mirrors reflecting shapes that weren't there. All unsigned, all pointing back to Alder Apartments. One night, I sat alone, reviewing the recordings we had left in the archives. Top. It was there in the background, faint but unmistakable. The rhythm, persistent. Clara called me, voice trembling. It's back. I heard it in my apartment, on the ceiling. I think it followed me. I didn't want to believe it, but deep down I knew the truth. Alder Apartments wasn't confined to its walls. The echoes had learned they could follow, feed, and hunt through sound itself. We returned to the city together, desperate to check on the building. Alder Apartments loomed, dark and silent, yet alive. The top floor windows flickered, shadows moving behind them, observing us. We entered cautiously. The lobby was quiet, empty. The stairwells were familiar, yet warped, stretching beyond reason. Top. Following the rhythm, we reached the top floor. It was destroyed, charred from the old fire, yet the shadows moved with purpose. The woman we had freed appeared, her face pale, stitched eyes wide in warning. She's different now, she whispered. The building, it's learning faster. It's adapting. Before we could react, the shadows surged. Shapes formed, twisting faces, wet, stitched together, all whispering our names. The floor groaned, walls vibrating with the rhythm. Top. Clara grabbed my arm. We need to leave now. I nodded. We ran, step by step, keeping to the rhythm. Top. The building tried to mislead us, warping hallways, stretching doors into impossibilities, but we kept the pattern. We burst into the street. Outside, the city looked normal and different, but as we turned to look back, Alder Apartments shifted. The top floor reformed, windows black, shadows reaching outward as if the building itself were exhaling. Clara whispered, "It's alive." I nodded. "And it's patient. It waits for the next tenant. It learns from each failure, each escape." We were lucky barely. We walked away, but the rhythm followed, faint in the back of my mind. "Top, top, person, top." I could hear it in Clara's voice when she called, in the hum of fluorescent lights, in the distant echo of footsteps in empty streets. Alder Apartments wasn't just a building. It was an experiment perfected over decades. And experiments don't end. They evolve. Weeks later, I saw a for rent sign in front of a nearby building. The agent was cheerful, showing an empty top floor apartment. "Top, top, person, top." I knew someone would move in soon, and the cycle would start again. The echoes never die. They just wait for the next tenant to walk upstairs.
You're listening to Midnight Horror Whispers, the show where true stories from the edge of reality find their way into your ears. Wherever you are tonight, curled up in bed, driving down a quiet road, or sitting alone with the lights low, I want you to relax, take a deep breath, and let yourself sink into the story. Tonight, we have a chilling tale from rural America. A story that feels so real, you might find yourself checking your own windows after it's done. So, dim the lights, get comfortable, and prepare for the account of one man's encounter with something that shouldn't exist. And now, our guest speaks for the first time. He's here to tell us, in his own words, what happened to him. Wherever you're listening from, remember to like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoy these true tales. And now, I'll let him take over.
My name's Daniel. I grew up in a small town in northern Kentucky, not far from the Ohio border. I wasn't much for ghost stories, never believed in them, really. But the summer after I turned 27, I moved into an old farmhouse my grandfather left me, sitting alone at the end of a dirt road that the locals just called the Hollow. It was late August when I first arrived. The sun was setting behind the ridges, and the air smelled of hay and wet earth. The house looked like it hadn't been lived in for decades. Paint peeling, windows dusty, shutters hanging off their hinges. I thought it was perfect, quiet, secluded, my kind of place. The first night, I unpacked, made a small fire in the old stone fireplace, and tried to convince myself that the creaks and groans of the old house were just what's settling. But even as I told myself that, I couldn't shake a feeling, like I wasn't supposed to be alone in that place. It started with small things. The floorboards in the hallway would squeak even when I hadn't stepped near them. I'd be in the kitchen, and the pantry door would swing open on its own, just a crack, as if someone had brushed past. I tried to ignore it. I kept telling myself that wind, or maybe an animal, was responsible. Then I found the first note. It was tucked behind a loose brick in the fireplace. A scrap of yellowed paper with words written in messy, slanted handwriting. Leave before night. I thought it was a prank, or maybe left by my grandfather decades ago as a joke. I laughed, crumpled it up, and threw it in the fire. But the unease wouldn't leave me. That night I heard it, the footsteps. Slow, heavy, walking from the hallway to the kitchen, then stopping right behind me. I froze. My heart was pounding. I didn't turn around. I didn't want to know. The next morning, the note was back. Same words, same handwriting, now pressed on the kitchen table. Leave before night. I didn't sleep that night. Every sound was amplified. The wind through the broken shutters sounded like whispering voices. Somewhere upstairs, I thought I heard someone walking across the floorboards, even though the attic had been locked since I got there. Days passed, and the incidents grew stranger. Mirrors would fog up, even when the house was cool. I would wake in the middle of the night to the feeling of someone standing at the foot of my bed. Always there, watching, silent. One evening, I went to the barn at the edge of the property. It had been empty for years, and I wanted to clean it up. As I opened the rusted door, I felt a cold wave rush past me, like someone had pushed through the air. Inside, the barn was empty, or so I thought. In the far corner, I saw a figure, a shadow of a man, hunched over like he was kneeling. I called out. No response. When I took a step closer, the shadow disappeared. After that, things escalated quickly. The knocking started. At first, it was occasional on the walls, on the floor, in the ceiling. Then it became constant. Every night, without fail, it would start just after midnight. A rhythm, like a heartbeat, pounding through the house. And then the whispering. Names, my name, softly at first, then louder, more insistent. I tried to leave, packed my things. But the moment I hit the dirt road to the main highway, something stopped me. The air grew thick, like the fog in the valley had suddenly dropped, and I could see the farmhouse from the road. But the lights were on. There weren't supposed to be lights on. The place had no electricity connected. Yet, through the windows, I saw shadows moving. Not me moving. Not the wind. Shadows of people, of figures. Watching. Waiting. I've told myself since then that maybe I imagined it. Maybe the isolation, the heat, The stress of moving into an old house did something to my mind. But I know what I saw. I know what I felt. And I know, even now, that the hollow doesn't want anyone there. I sleep with the lights on now. I've never returned to that farmhouse since I left. But some nights, when the wind shifts just right, I swear I hear footsteps again. Outside my window. Slow. Heavy. Waiting. The days after that first night were a blur of unease and exhaustion. I tried to get back to a routine, fixing the roof, clearing weeds from the yard, even painting the peeling shutters. But no matter what I did, the house had its own rhythm, its own will. It was the third night that things went beyond just shadows and whispers. I was lying in bed, the ceiling fan creaking, when I felt it again, that presence at the foot of my bed. But this time I could see it. Not clearly, but enough. A figure, darker than the room, standing silently, watching me. My heart froze. I wanted to scream, but no sound would come. My body felt heavy, as though the air itself had turned to lead. I blinked, and it was gone. But the weight didn't leave. I could feel it all around me, pressing in like the walls were closing. I got up, shakily, and went to the window. The valley outside was quiet, empty, peaceful, except for one thing. In the distance, near the edge of the forest, there was movement. Figures, slowly emerging from the tree line. Not running, not walking, gliding almost. I told myself it was a trick of the moonlight, shadows of trees and branches. I wanted to believe that, but I couldn't shake the feeling that they knew I was watching, that they were waiting. The next morning, I found the second note. Same messy handwriting, same yellowed paper, but this one had changed. It said, "You can't leave." That hit me harder than anything before. I'd felt it before, that fear in my chest, but reading those words made it tangible. The house wasn't just haunted, it was alive, and it didn't want me to go. I began to notice things in the daytime too. Small things like objects moving when I wasn't looking. A chair shifted an inch, a plate overturned in the sink. But more disturbing were the sounds. Footsteps in the hallways during the afternoon, soft at first, then growing louder as if something was pacing, circling me. Sometimes I would hear laughter, low, guttural, almost human but not quite. One night, desperate for sleep, I tried to convince myself that facing it would make it stop. I sat in the living room, flashlight in hand, and called out, "Who's there?" Silence. Then, a whisper so close it felt like it was inside my skull. "Don't leave. Stay forever." I ran upstairs and locked myself in the bedroom. But it didn't matter. That night I saw the walls move. Not slowly, but rippling, like the house itself was breathing. Shapes formed in the shadows. Faces, twisted and screaming silently. Couldn't look away, couldn't move. I was trapped in that living nightmare, paralyzed by fear and fascination at the same time. Days blended into nights. I lost track of how long I'd been there. Food sat uneaten. The mail piled up. When I forced myself to step outside, the air felt heavier, thicker. The valley, the trees, the field beyond the barn. All of it felt wrong, like I'd stepped into a place that wasn't meant for the living. It was during one of those desperate daylight walks that I found the old well behind the barn. The stones were covered in moss, and the water inside was black and still. I don't know why I felt compelled to look, but I leaned over the edge. For a moment, I thought I saw faces in the water. Pale, desperate faces, pressing against the surface from below. I stumbled back, heart racing, and the air turned icy cold. The whispering followed me back to the house. That night, I couldn't sleep at all. Every creak, every shadow, every whisper felt like it was coming from inside me. I tried talking to myself, rationalizing, but it was useless. And then I heard it. A voice, clear and unmistakable, whispering my name from the basement. I don't know why I went down there. Curiosity, courage, or the sheer terror of not knowing. The basement door was cold to the touch. The air inside smelled of damp earth and decay. As I descended the steps, I felt fingers brush my shoulder. Not human fingers. Long, thin, icy. I spun around, nothing. And then I saw it. At the far corner, where the shadows pooled thickest, a figure crouched. Its head tilted unnaturally, and its eyes, if you could call them that, reflected the faint light from the single bulb overhead. It didn't move. It just watched me, and for the first time I understood. This wasn't random haunting. This was intentional. It was waiting. I ran back upstairs, heart hammering, and locked every door I could find. I didn't sleep. Couldn't. The house was alive, breathing, watching. And every night it became more daring, more bold. I began to realize that staying was a trap. But leaving wasn't an option either. Something didn't want me to leave. And I was learning too late that the house had a way of making that clear. I thought I'd seen everything the house had to offer by then, but I was wrong. By the 4th week, the presence didn't just linger in the shadows. It invaded everything I did. It started with the animals. My old dog, Rusty, who had been my companion for years, refused to come near the house. He would stand at the edge of the yard, growling at nothing, hackles raised, eyes fixed on the house as if he could see them too. One morning, I found him whimpering, nose pressed to the back door, staring at the basement window. I never went down there again. Then came the voices, not whispers this time, but speaking. Clear sentences, forming words in a language I didn't understand. The kind of language that makes your stomach twist and your skin crawl. I would wake in the middle of the night to conversations, like dozens of people just beyond the walls, speaking all at once, overlapping, incomprehensible. And every so often, I'd catch one word I understood. My name. Always my name. Objects began moving in ways that defied explanation. Plates slid off counters as if pushed. Chairs tipped over. Doors slammed shut with such force the entire house shook. I tried recording it on my phone, trying to convince myself it was just some trick I was imagining. But the recordings were always silent. Nothing. Just static, like the house itself swallowed the evidence. One night, I decided to leave. I packed my things, called a cab, and even started my car. The engine wouldn't start. The radio, which hadn't worked in years, came alive suddenly, blaring static, then faint, distorted laughter. I slammed my hands against the steering wheel, trying to make it stop. And then I heard it, footsteps behind me. Not on the road, not outside. Inside the car. Heavy, deliberate, pacing. I didn't look back. I knew what I'd see. I finally managed to get the engine running and drove as fast as I could down the hollow road. But when I looked in the rearview mirror, I swear I saw it. The figure from the basement, standing in the middle of the road, watching me go. And then it vanished. Back at the house the next day, or what I thought was the next day, I found the notes again. More of them, taped to the walls, scattered across the kitchen table, tucked inside drawers. But these weren't warnings anymore. They were demands. You belong here. Don't try to leave. Forever. And it wasn't just the house anymore. I started seeing them outside. At night, when I tried to leave for groceries or even a walk, shadows appeared at the edge of the fields, just standing there, watching, always watching. Their forms weren't solid, more like smoke shaped into figures, but when I looked away, I could feel their gaze on me. Sleep became impossible. I would wake to feeling hands on my face, cold, clawing, pressing me down. Shadows crawling along the walls, whispering my name. Sometimes, when I turned on the lights, I would catch glimpses of them in the corners of my eyes. Pale faces with hollow eyes, mouths moving in silent screams. One evening, I sat on the porch, trying to keep my sanity. The sun had set, the air was thick and still, and then I heard it, a child laughing. Sweet, high-pitched, innocent, but coming from the barn. The barn had been empty for decades. Rusty barked and bolted from the porch, refusing to return. I grabbed a flashlight and forced myself toward the barn. Inside, the air was frigid. My breath came in clouds. And there, at the far end, was a little girl. Pale, eyes dark and hollow, staring at me. She raised a finger, pointed directly at me, and whispered, "Stay." I ran back to the house and locked every door, every window. I stayed up all night, flashlight in hand, praying it would be gone in the morning. But when dawn came, The house was quiet only on the surface. Shadows still lingered in the corners. Faces pressed against the windows, mouths moving silently. That's when I realized this wasn't just a haunting. The house didn't want me out of curiosity. It wanted me trapped, and it would do anything to keep me there. Anything. I stopped counting the nights. Sleep didn't matter anymore. Daylight didn't either. The house had swallowed both. By the 5th week, time began to feel broken. Clock stopped. My phone battery would drain within minutes, no matter how long I charged it. Some mornings I'd wake and the sun would already be gone. As if I'd slept through an entire day I couldn't remember. The house had changed, too. The walls looked darker, as if stained by something seeping through from the other side. The smell of damp earth and rot never left. And the sounds, those were the worst. You'd think it would be the screams or whispers, but no. It was the breathing. I could hear the house breathing, every night. Long, deep, human breaths coming from the walls themselves. I started marking days on the kitchen wall to keep my sanity. But one morning, all the marks were gone. In their place was one message, carved into the plaster: "Stay home." Rusty was gone by then. I found the back door open, his collar lying on the porch. There was blood on the steps. I never saw him again. Something in me broke that night. I decided I'd rather die trying to leave than rot in that house another day. I packed what I could and waited for dawn. But when I opened the front door, dawn never came. It was night outside, black, endless night. The sky was wrong, full of stars I didn't recognize. The air was thick, heavy, almost solid. I stepped outside and realized I wasn't standing on my porch anymore. The field was gone. The trees were gone. The world was gone. All that existed was the house behind me, glowing faintly in the dark, and an ocean of nothing stretching out forever. I turned to go back inside, but the door had closed. I pounded on it, screaming, begging. The wood felt alive under my fists, pulsing with every hit. Then I heard it whisper, right next to my ear, "You are home." When I woke, I was back in bed. Morning sunlight through the window, birds chirping outside. For a second, I thought it was all a nightmare. But when I looked down, my hands were covered in dust and splinters. My knuckles were bruised. I'd really been outside wherever outside was. The notes had returned, hundreds of them now, pinned to the walls, the ceiling, the furniture, each one written in the same hand. Some said my name over and over. Some said things I didn't understand. But one message appeared more than any other. Under the floor. I don't know why I listened. Maybe I was too tired to fight. Maybe curiosity finally replaced fear. But I tore up the old floorboards in the living room, one by one. Underneath, I found dirt, fresh, disturbed soil, and something buried just beneath it. It was a box, small, wooden, wrapped in cloth that smelled like mold and iron. Inside were photographs, dozens of them, of people I'd never met. Men, women, children, all standing in front of the farmhouse, smiling faintly, eyes dull and empty. And at the back of the box was a final picture. It was me, standing at the porch, smiling that same empty smile. I dropped the box, stumbled back, and that's when I saw them again. Dozens of figures standing outside the windows, surrounding the house. Every one of them pale, still watching. The little girl was there too, and this time she wasn't alone. They started moving closer, pressing their faces against the glass, their mouths moving in perfect silence. I could see their lips forming one word, over and over, "Stay." The walls began to shake. The house groaned. The air filled with dust and whispers. The photographs from the box scattered across the floor, sliding toward the fireplace like pulled by invisible hands. I watched, frozen, as they burned without flame, curling, blackening, disappearing into the air. And then everything stopped. Silence, stillness. Not even my own breath dared to make a sound. That's when I heard it, the faintest sound, coming from below the floor again. A heartbeat, slow, heavy, like the house itself was alive, waiting for me to make my next move. I couldn't sleep that night. Every shadow, every creak, every whisper felt magnified. as if the house itself was breathing over me. But I couldn't ignore what I'd discovered under the floor. The heartbeat. It was calling me, drawing me back. The next evening, I forced myself to return to the living room. The floorboards were still removed, the hole yawning like a dark mouth. The air that rose from it smelled of wet earth and decay. My flashlight trembled in my hand. I knew I had to look. I climbed down into the crawl space. The dirt floor was cold and damp. My fingers dug into the soil as I moved forward, and that's when I saw it. A stone slab slightly raised above the ground. It wasn't part of the foundation, it had been placed there deliberately. Carved into the stone were symbols, strange and jagged, nothing I recognized. The heartbeat grew louder. I swear it wasn't mine anymore. I tried to back away, but the floor beneath me shifted. Not like the wood settling, but alive. Something was moving beneath the dirt. I heard scraping, clawing like nails on bone. I wanted to scream, but no sound came. The slab lifted, or maybe it moved itself. And there, inside a hollow beneath, I saw them, the bodies. Not fresh, not decayed, frozen, preserved in some unholy way. Hundreds of them, stacked carefully, faces still intact, eyes wide open. And then I realized something that made my blood run cold. I recognized some of them, people from the town, people who had gone missing over the decades. And in the very center, lying on a bed of dirt, was me, or what looked like me, face twisted, eyes empty. I wanted to vomit, to run, to tear my own eyes out, but I couldn't move. I was frozen by the sight. The heartbeat was louder now, inside my skull. Then I felt it, hands. Thin, cold, reaching up from the box, grabbing my ankles, my legs, pulling me down. I fought, clawing at the dirt, trying to pull myself back into the crawl space. The walls seemed to shift, closing in. The hands dragged me closer to the bodies, closer to the slab, and the whispers began. Thousands of voices, chanting in that language I didn't understand, repeating one phrase over and over, "Join us." Somewhere deep in my mind, I remembered my grandfather's warning, something he had muttered once as a joke, or so I thought, about the hollow and the farmhouse. Something about it feeding, something about it never letting anyone go. I kicked and twisted, finally breaking free, crawling out of the crawl space, falling onto the living room floor. My flashlight skittered across the room, and then I saw it, the walls, covered in shadows, not human-shaped, more like liquid darkness, moving, swirling, reaching for me. I grabbed my coat, my keys, anything I could take, and ran to the door. But when I opened it, there was nothing. No yard, no dirt road, no morning sunlight, just blackness. And the figures, the pale, hollow-eyed figures, all around me silently pressing in. The little girl at the center pointing, smiling. I screamed. And then, just like that, I was back in bed. Morning sunlight pouring through the windows. Rusty nowhere to be seen. My heart was racing so hard it hurt. I thought it was over. I thought I had dreamed it all. But when I looked at the living room floor, I saw it. A single note, scribbled on yellowed paper. Welcome home. I knew then, in a way I can never explain, that I had not left. That I would never leave. And the house, it had chosen me to join them, to be preserved, waiting, for the next unsuspecting soul to arrive. After that night, I stopped trying to leave. Couldn't. Every attempt, every plan, ended the same way. I woke back in my bed, the sun streaming in like nothing had happened, and the house waiting, patient, omnipresent. I began to notice things I hadn't before. The mirrors in the house. They weren't reflecting me. They reflected the house, yes, but not me. Sometimes, when I looked long enough, I would catch glimpses of the figures behind me in the glass, watching, always watching, their hollow eyes boring into my back. The sounds became unbearable. The whispers escalated into chanting. Footsteps paced the floor above me, circling, never stopping. And then the scratching began. Nails on wood, walls, floorboards, as if the house itself were trying to tear its way open from inside. I tried to communicate with them, in the only way I could think. I spoke aloud, begged for mercy, pleaded to leave. And one night, I heard a response. A voice, deep, low, echoing, from the walls themselves. You belong. The air turned thick, hot, and heavy, and the shadows started to move on their own. They swirled around me, forming shapes, distorted, impossible angles, faces I recognized and faces I did not. The little girl appeared again, floating above the floor, pointing at me, smiling that same empty smile. Then the room shifted. The walls stretched, warped, turning into a corridor that seemed to go on forever. I ran, even though I didn't know where I was going. I screamed, but no sound came. The floor pulsed beneath my feet, rising and falling like the beating of a great heart. I could feel it in my chest, in my skull, as if the house had become a part of me. Somewhere along the way, I saw the photographs again. They floated in the air, spinning slowly, showing images of everyone who had entered the house before me. People I recognized from town, strangers, faces smiling, faces twisted in terror. And in the very center, my own photograph appeared, slowly decaying, eyes darkening. I don't know how long I ran through that endless corridor. Time lost all meaning. Every step I took was mirrored by shadows, by whispers, by cold, crawling hands. The house was alive, aware, feeding on my fear. And somewhere in the distance, I could hear a laugh, low, guttural, as if it had been waiting decades for me to arrive. By the end of that night, I realized something I hadn't dared to admit. The house didn't just want me there. It wanted me to see, to understand. It wanted me to join. And no matter what I did, no matter how I ran, how I screamed, how I begged, I couldn't escape. I've tried to rationalize it since. Isolation, stress, sleep deprivation. Maybe I'm losing my mind. But I know the truth. And if you ever come across that farmhouse at the end of the hollow, don't go in. Don't look at the windows. Don't stay. Because once you do, it's already too late. By the time the 7th week came, I stopped keeping track of days entirely. I didn't eat much. I didn't drink much. The house had me, body and soul. Every step I took, every breath I drew, felt like it belonged to the walls themselves. It started with the shadows becoming solid. Not just forms, not just glimpses in corners, but full figures, moving through the house as if they had weight. They walked the halls, stared through the windows, leaned over furniture. And they weren't silent anymore. They whispered my name, called me to join them, laughed in that hollow way that made my bones ache. The little girl appeared again, only she wasn't alone. There were others with her now, pale, hollow-eyed children, standing silently in the corners, their eyes following me, their smiles empty and cruel. One of them stepped forward, and I realized it wasn't a child at all, just a figure made to look like one, stretched and twisted, impossibly thin, long limbs bending where they shouldn't. And then I heard it, the heartbeat, not the quiet one from before, but loud, deafening, like the house had become a living thing with one massive, monstrous heart. The floor beneath me throbbed in time with it. I fell to my knees, pressed my hands over my ears, but it didn't stop. I could feel it in my chest, in my skull, in my very bones. I tried to run, but the walls shifted again, turning the rooms into endless corridors. The doors I tried to open led nowhere, only deeper into the maze. And the shadows followed, circling, moving, always just beyond the reach of the flashlight I held in trembling hands. That's when I saw them, the faces, hundreds, maybe thousands, pressed into the walls themselves. Not painted, not drawn, living faces. Silent, expressionless, eyes staring through me, mouths moving in slow, dreadful motions. They were the people who had come before me, and I knew with absolute certainty that I was next. I screamed until I couldn't scream anymore. I ran until I couldn't run anymore. And then I felt it, the hands again, cold, rigid, clawing at me, dragging me toward the center of the house. I fought, twisted, kicked, but I couldn't break free. The shadows, the walls, the very floor were alive, holding me, shaping me, pulling me down. And the little girl, she floated above me now, pointing, smiling, her eyes empty pits of nothing. Around her, the other figures closed in, circling, whispering, chanting, reaching, pulling, dragging. And I realized, in a moment of horrifying clarity, that I wasn't just trapped. I was becoming part of the house. The heartbeat swallowed me, the whispers consumed me, and as the shadows pressed closer, I knew I would never leave. Not really. The house had claimed me, and I understood, finally, the truth my grandfather had hinted at. The hollow doesn't just haunt. It feeds, and it waits for those foolish enough to step inside its walls. I don't remember how long it's been. Days, weeks, maybe years, I can't tell anymore. Time doesn't exist in the hollow. The house has no regard for it. It only exists to feed, to trap, to consume. I am still here, not fully myself. The shadows and the walls, the whispers and the heartbeat, they've made me part of the house. I can feel it in my chest, in my limbs, in my thoughts. Sometimes, I catch glimpses of my old body lying in the photographs, the empty-eyed version, waiting silently beneath the floorboards. And sometimes, I see new faces, strangers, foolish people who came too close, peering through the windows, and the house smiles for them, silently, hungrily. I've tried to warn people. I've tried to tell them not to come, not to step onto the hollow's dirt road. But the words never leave me. They're trapped here too, like me, just echoes carried on the wind that seeps through the cracks and broken windows. If you ever find yourself near an old, isolated farmhouse at the end of a dirt road in the hollow, don't stop. Don't even glance at it. Don't let curiosity or disbelief lure you in. Once you step inside, the walls will watch, the shadows will wait, and the heartbeat will call. And no matter how fast you run, no matter how loud you scream, no matter what you do, it will not let you go. I am Daniel, and I am still here.
Welcome to Midnight Radio Horror. Tonight, we bring you the story of Aaron, a man whose ordinary life took a terrifying turn. A story that will follow him from his childhood all the way into the shadows that haunt him now. Sit back, relax, let the rain sounds soothe you, and let the black screen guide your imagination. Here's Aaron.
My name is Aaron, and I grew up in a small, almost forgotten town in rural Kentucky called Leachfield. Population barely a few thousand. A town where everyone knows your name, your business, and your past before you even realize it. I was the youngest of 3 kids, and my childhood was simple, sometimes painfully ordinary. But ordinary has a way of hiding the things you never expect, the things that can crawl into your life unnoticed, until one day they're all you can see. My father, Ray, was a quiet man, stern in his own way, but kind. He drove trucks for a living, often gone for days, sometimes weeks, hauling goods across the country. He'd come back with stories about roadside diners, storms that made bridges sway, and strangers who smelled of something otherworldly. I loved those stories. They made the world bigger than the small farmhouse we lived in. My mother, Linda, stayed home with us kids. She was the warmth of our house, the smell of fresh bread baking, the hum of a lullaby that never seemed to leave her lips. She worried about everything, especially me. I was restless, always wandering, always poking my nose where it didn't belong. Maybe that's why some of the things that happened to me later hit me so hard. I had always been curious, always looking too far, too deep. Dad had one obsession, his radio. Not a TV, not a computer, not even the truck's CD. An old shortwave radio that sat on a shelf in the garage. He said it kept him company, that the voices from faraway stations made the nights less lonely. I didn't understand it as a kid. It was just a box with a speaker and dials, dusty, humming with static. But to him, it was alive. He died when I was 12. Heart attack. No warning. Just gone. I remember standing at the funeral, my chest tight, staring at his casket, and thinking I could still hear him humming from the garage. Mom cried. My siblings tried to console me. Couldn't breathe. After Dad passed, the house felt empty. I remember walking into the garage one night, the radio sitting there as it always had, but now silent, still lifeless. I didn't touch it. Couldn't. It felt wrong, like it belonged to him and him alone. Life went on. I went to school, graduated, left for college. Life was busy enough to ignore the hollow spaces in my memories. But I always came back home, especially after Mom passed 10 years later. Alone in the house, surrounded by shadows and memories, the radio seemed to call to me. Not with sound, but with a weight in the air, a pull I couldn't explain. The first incident happened on a stormy night. Rain hammered the roof, wind rattled the windows. The electricity flickered and died. I went to the garage to find some candles. That's when I saw it, Dad's old radio. Dusty, static on the surface, just sitting there, waiting. I don't know why I touched it. Curiosity, maybe. Pull, maybe. I wiped the dust away, plugged it in. The hum was immediate. Low, steady, like the heartbeat of the house. I laughed nervously. It's just the storm, I whispered, and then I heard it. My name, Aaron. I froze. My pulse pounded. My breath hitched. Sounded like him. My father. The voice I hadn't heard in years. I stumbled back. Dad. I whispered. Nothing. The static hummed, but no answer. Then it came again, clearer. You shouldn't have turned it back on. The cold hit me then. Not the wind outside. Not the storm. Something inside the house, inside the air, that wrapped around me like icy fingers. I wanted to run, to yell, but my legs wouldn't move. I convinced myself it was my mind. After all, memories of my father were strong. Perhaps I was imagining the voice. But then it said my mother's name. Linda. She'd been gone for 10 years. And the voice, it wasn't angry. It wasn't pleading. It was calm. Familiar. Waiting. I felt it then, a presence. Watching. Patient. Waiting for me to make a move. My heartbeat thundered in my chest. The hum of the radio grew louder. like it had something to say that no one else could hear. For nights after, the radio whispered, sometimes names, sometimes memories, sometimes things I couldn't understand, things from the past I hadn't remembered. Shadows moved in the corners of the garage. Cold crept into my bones. The house felt alive, and not in a good way. I didn't sleep. I barely ate. Every night, around midnight, the voices returned. Sometimes Dad, sometimes Mom, sometimes both. Sometimes something new, something darker. I knew then that the radio was more than a radio, that something in it, or something connected to it, hadn't left with my parents, that it had been waiting, and now it was reaching for me. And that's how it all began, with a storm, a dusty old radio, and voices that shouldn't exist anymore. Voices that were mine to hear whether I wanted to or not. The first night I realized it wasn't just imagination. The first night I knew something was reaching through the static. Started like any other stormy evening. Rain pattered against the roof, wind rattling the old windows. I had been in the living room, mindlessly scrolling through my phone, trying to distract myself from the unease that had become normal in the house. It was around midnight when I heard it. Not the hum I was used to, but a whisper. My name. Clear. Aaron. I froze. The hair on my arms stood on end. My pulse raced. My body wanted to run, but my curiosity, or maybe my denial, kept me rooted. I whispered back, Dad. Silence. Then the whisper returned, slightly louder this time. Closer. Not from the garage, not from the walls. From everywhere. From nowhere. Aaron. I swallowed hard, feeling a cold trickle down my spine. The room seemed to stretch. Shadows lengthened unnaturally. I reached for the radio, though I knew it was unplugged, powerless. The moment my hand touched it, a low hum surged through the room. Not from electricity, not from sound. Something deeper, vibrations that rattled my bones. And then I heard another voice, softer, almost a sigh. My mother's. Aaron. Couldn't breathe. I stumbled backward, colliding with the couch. My heart felt like it would explode. My mind raced, trying to rationalize it. Old memories, stress, sleep deprivation. But then the voices merged, overlapping, calling, coaxing, whispering fragments of memories. Childhood birthday parties, scraped knees, bedtime stories. Then things I didn't recognize, things I couldn't explain. I wanted to scream. I wanted to flee, but something held me there, gripping me with a cold, invisible hand. I sat on the floor, hugging my knees, listening. Then the air shifted. The room grew colder. Frost formed along the edges of the windows, curling like spiderwebs. My breath fogged in the air, and then I saw movement. Shadows shifting, stretching across the walls. Not my own. Not any shape I recognized. Figures that didn't belong. One shadow separated itself from the rest. Small at first, then taller, humanoid. Slowly, deliberately moving toward me. I scrambled backward, tripping over the coffee table. The hum of the radio intensified. The voices weren't just voices anymore. They were laughter, crying, murmurs, whispers in languages I didn't know, interwoven with fragments of my parents' voices. I got to my feet and ran, through the living room toward the garage door. The shadow followed, gliding across the floor. My legs burned. My lungs ached, but I couldn't stop. I reached the garage. I fumbled with the door handle. It wouldn't budge. Cold air gusted in through the cracks, carrying whispers I could almost understand. Aaron, come with us. And then I felt it, a touch. Not soft, not gentle, but firm, cold, pressing against my shoulder. I spun around, expecting something, but nothing was there. My flashlight, dead. My phone, no signal. And the radio, unplugged, still hummed, vibrating with a life of its own. The whispers intensified, forming words I could finally understand. You were always curious. Now you see. Now you listen, now you belong. I slammed the door open and bolted outside. The storm had eased into a drizzle, fog crawling low across the yard. The air was thick, heavy. I stumbled over wet grass, heart hammering. Then I stopped. Something drew my eyes to the old oak tree at the edge of the yard. Fog curled around it, moving like fingers. And there, just beyond the mist, I saw them, silhouettes. Not fully human, not fully shadow. Watching, waiting. A whisper floated on the wind. "Aaron, you're ours now." I don't remember how I got back inside. Only that I collapsed on the couch, soaked, shivering uncontrollably. The radio sat in the corner, silent, seemingly harmless. But I knew better. Every night since, the voices returned. Some nights just whispers. Some nights, full conversations. Sometimes laughter. Sometimes screams. Sometimes a lullaby that turns cold and sharp, like broken glass sliding across my skin. And every night, I see shadows. Not always in the same place. Not always the same shape. But always watching, waiting, patient. I've tried to explain it, to rationalize it, tell myself it's grief, sleep deprivation, stress, but it's not. The radio isn't just a radio. The voices aren't just memories. And I know now, the past doesn't stay buried. It reaches, it waits, calls. And tonight, I know it will call again. After that first terrifying night, I couldn't ignore what was happening. I couldn't pretend it was just my imagination. I knew that radio, my father's old shortwave, had a presence, a will, something that wanted to reach me. I didn't know why. I didn't know how. But I knew I had to understand it, even if it scared me more than anything else I'd ever faced. The next morning, I started with research. I dug through Dad's old notebooks, the ones he kept in the garage beside the radio. Handwritten notes about frequencies, call signs, distant stations, and strange occurrences he never told anyone. Some of the pages were illegible, smeared with what looked like water stains or maybe sweat. He'd circled certain frequencies in red ink, always noting the same thing: unstable, dangerous. I wasn't sure what he meant. Dangerous how? To whom? But I felt it already. Whatever my father had encountered, I was stepping into it now. That night, I turned the radio on again. I carefully tuned it to the frequency Dad had circled in one of the notebooks. Static filled the room, but beneath it, I could hear faint whispers, names, places, fragments of conversations I didn't recognize. Then it spoke, clearer than ever. My father's voice. "Aaron, you found it." I froze. The hairs on my arms and neck stood on end. "Dad, what is this?" I whispered. The static swelled. And then my mother's voice joined him. Soft, almost mournful. "You shouldn't be here." The voices weren't just memories anymore. They had intent. They weren't comforting or nostalgic. They were warning me, guiding me, or maybe testing me. I decided I needed to record everything. I set up an old tape recorder on the garage shelf right beside the radio. If this was real, if what I was hearing wasn't my mind breaking, I needed proof. I needed to understand. Hours passed. The storm outside returned, wind howling against the house. The radio hummed steadily, then whispers, first indistinct, then clear. "Aaron, come closer. See the truth." I leaned in. The static thickened, almost choking me with sound. And then, in a split second, I saw it. A figure barely visible standing behind the radio. It wasn't fully human, but it wasn't fully shadow either. Seemed waiting, patient, watching. I stumbled backward. My hands shook. The recorder continued to click and whir, picking up every whisper, every breath, every chilling syllable that formed words I couldn't comprehend. For weeks, I listened to the recordings. Every night the voices changed, evolved, revealing snippets of my father's experiences. Memories I didn't know existed, secrets of the town, the house, even the radio itself. One night, the voice said something I couldn't ignore. "You must leave before it takes more than your curiosity." Curiosity, that's what had always gotten me into trouble. And I realize now it might be the thing that destroys me. Then objects in the garage began moving on their own. The radio itself would tilt slightly, as if reacting to the voices. My father's tools clattered off the workbench, scattered across the concrete floor, and I wasn't imagining it. The tape recorder picked it all up. Metallic clanging, faint whispers, urgent murmurs. I tried to leave the garage once, but the door wouldn't budge. The air was heavy, thick, almost viscous. Cold seeped into my bones, freezing my movements, locking my breath. And then I felt it again. A presence brushing against my shoulder, circling me, invisible yet tangible. It was then I understood. The radio wasn't just transmitting voices. It was a gateway, a conduit to something beyond. Something that had been connected to my father, and now, through me, it wanted more. Couldn't sleep. I barely ate. Days blurred together, but the recordings continued. They told stories. Whispers of places my father had never visited, warnings of things I couldn't yet see, instructions in languages that made my stomach twist. One night, I dared to follow them. The static formed shapes, faint shadows in the corner of the garage. They pointed toward the back wall. And there, behind the old storage shelves, I found a hidden compartment. Inside, a collection of papers yellowed with age. Diagrams of the radio frequency charts, symbols I couldn't recognize. And photographs, black and white images of my father standing beside a man I didn't know. A man with eyes so dark, so hollow, it felt like they could swallow me whole. The voices grew frantic, excited. My father's voice pleading, my mother's voice warning. I realized in that moment that whatever this was, it was alive. It watched. It learned. It had been watching my father long before me, guiding him, testing him, maybe even controlling him. I left the garage that night with a pounding heart. I couldn't tell anyone. The town would call me crazy, but I knew the truth. I had touched something old, something patient, something hungry, and the radio, it hummed softly in the dark, waiting. After discovering the hidden compartment in the garage, I couldn't sleep. Every night, the radio hummed, the whispers creeping into my dreams, lingering in the shadows of my room. I started keeping a notebook, trying to write down every word, every sound, every fleeting shadow I caught out of the corner of my eye. The first time it touched me directly, I knew this wasn't just some trick of the mind. I was in the garage, sitting on the concrete floor, flashlight shaking in my hand, tape recorder beside me. The static grew louder than usual, almost drowning out my own breathing. And then I felt it, a hand. Not cold, exactly, but heavy, icy, like metal pressing against my skin. I spun around. Nothing. My flashlight flickered. The air smelled of something metallic, like blood, but faint, old, decaying. The radio clicked on by itself. A low, deliberate hum filled the garage. Then the voice came. Not my father's this time. Not my mother's. Something new. Something older than the house, older than the town. A voice that rasped like dry leaves scraping concrete. Aaron, you are here, finally. The hairs on my neck bristled. My knees buckled. I realized I wasn't just hearing it. I was feeling it. Every nerve in my body screamed, warning me to flee. But I couldn't. My curiosity, my obsession had me pinned. The tape recorder picked up words I could barely understand. The static formed shapes, almost like letters, twisting in the air around me. I reached out, trying to touch them. The second my fingers brushed the air, the temperature dropped sharply. My breath came out in thick clouds, and then I felt it again, brushing against my shoulder, moving down my arm, cold and insistent. I fell backward, crashing into the workbench. Tools scattered, the hum of the radio rising, voices overlapping. I couldn't tell one from the other. My father's voice pleading, my mother's voice scolding, and the new voice patient, commanding, cold. I screamed, and then silence. For hours, nothing moved. The radio sat there, lifeless, as if nothing had happened. I checked the tape recorder. The static was recorded, the whispers faintly audible, but the weight in the room, the pressure, the ice in my veins, that wasn't captured. That was real. The next morning, I noticed something else. Marks. Small scratches along my forearm. Not deep, but enough to draw blood. I hadn't been touched by anything tangible. And yet, there they were. My skin burned where they appeared. Over the next few nights, the encounters became more direct. Objects moved on their own. The radio tuned itself to strange, distant frequencies. Sometimes I would hear voices in languages I didn't know. Sometimes my parents' voices would speak over them, guiding me, warning me. And sometimes, I swear I could hear other things. Something old, something hungry, whispering from beyond. One night I saw her, a figure, a girl, pale with dark, hollow eyes. She stood near the oak tree at the edge of the yard, her hair tangled, wet from rain, staring straight at me. She didn't move, but I felt her presence, heavy and demanding. The fog curled around her, shifting, almost like it had a life of its own. "Aaron," the radio whispered. I knew it wasn't safe. I knew I should run, but something in me wanted to approach her. My father had warned me in those scattered notebook entries about obsession, about listening too closely. But I couldn't help myself. I stepped closer. The fog thickened, pressing against my face, curling around my legs. My heart pounded. The girl raised a hand, and suddenly I was pulled forward. Not by wind, not by anything I could see. Something invisible, strong, gripping me, dragging me toward her. I stumbled, fell to my knees. The radio hummed louder, almost singing, almost alive. And then, just as suddenly as it started, the grip released. I scrambled back, gasping, drenched in sweat, shivering. That night, I understood something terrifying. The voices weren't just memories. They weren't just echoes of my parents. They were alive. They were sentient. And they were testing me, shaping me, trying to draw me into a world I couldn't yet comprehend. I barricaded the garage door. I unplugged the radio. I tried to sleep, but it was no use. Shadows moved in my room. Whispers came through my closed windows. The air carried that metallic, decaying smell. And the girl, I saw her at the edge of my vision, always just out of reach. I started losing track of time. Days blurred into nights. Sleep became impossible. I was trapped in a waking nightmare, and the radio never stopped. I knew I had to confront it. I knew I couldn't keep hiding, but I had no idea what I was dealing with. No idea how powerful it was, and no idea if I would survive the night. After that night, after the girl appeared at the edge of the yard and the radio hummed with its strange life, I realized I couldn't ignore it anymore. Whatever was in that radio, whatever had been tied to my father, it wasn't just content with whispers or shadows. It wanted attention. It wanted control. I started keeping a journal, writing every event, every word, every sound, every movement. Because if I went insane, I needed evidence. Proof that this wasn't just grief or stress or isolation talking. It began subtly. I'd hear footsteps in the living room when I was alone. Not the creak of the floorboards, but deliberate steps, pacing, circling me. The radio, unplugged, would suddenly click on. Static, low at first, then forming words I could almost understand. "Aaron, you shouldn't be here." I would look around, heart hammering, but there would be nothing. Only the fog creeping along the corners of the room. The shadows stretching longer than any light source should allow. Then came the knocks. First, I thought someone had broken in. 3 short raps on the window, 3 on the garage door. But the doors were locked. No one was outside. The rain had stopped. The night was silent, except for the insistent tapping. I got close to the radio, and that's when I felt it again. A touch, soft but firm, on my arm. Cold. I spun around, but nothing was there. And then I heard her laugh. Lydia. Soft. Musical. Innocent at first. But underneath it, a rasp. A hunger. I tried leaving the garage, but the door wouldn't budge. The shadows moved differently now. Following me, converging, almost forming shapes. Faces. Not fully formed, but enough to make me recoil. One of them looked like my father, twisted, shadowed, watching me. The radio hummed louder, vibrating through the floor, and the girl, Lydia, appeared again. this time inside the garage. Fog wrapped around her like a cloak. Her eyes were hollow, her skin pale, almost transparent. She didn't speak. She just stared, waiting. I fell to my knees. My notebook slipped from my hands. The papers scattered. And then I understood. She wasn't just a figure. She was part of the radio, part of the static, part of something older than my family, older than the house. I tried shouting at her, "Leave me alone." Nothing. And then she smiled. I don't think you can understand what that smile looked like. It wasn't friendly. It wasn't human. It was patient. Promised something. Pain, probably. Maybe death. But it also beckoned. From that night on, I couldn't sleep in my own bed. Not without the radio playing. Not without the static, the whispers, the lullaby. I started hearing voices everywhere. The fridge hummed. The television emitted static even when unplugged. The air conditioner whispered my name. And Lydia, always Lydia. Waiting, watching, learning. I became obsessed. Obsession replaced fear. I needed to understand her. I needed to know why she was here, why she had chosen me. And the radio, the cursed, humming, alive radio, became my only guide. One night, I traced the frequencies again, searching for her, listening to her. And this time, I understood her language, not words exactly, but feelings, images, memories, whispers of events I hadn't lived, places I hadn't been. But they felt real and horrifying. She showed me things. A man disappearing into a cornfield, screaming, never found. Children laughing in a pond, their eyes hollow. A farmhouse collapsing, its inhabitants trapped inside. And all of it tied to that radio, tied to whoever she was, tied to the shadows that crept behind me even in daylight. The physical manifestations increased. My bedroom walls would sweat, doors slammed, windows rattled violently even without wind. Objects flew. I once woke up to my chair being thrown across the room. No explanation, no one around, but her presence was undeniable. I began to lose myself. Hours blurred into days, days into nights. The radio never stopped. Lydia never left. And I knew deep down she never would. I reached a breaking point. I decided to confront her. I grabbed the radio and carried it outside during a storm. Rain poured, wind howled, lightning flashing across the sky. I held it up and screamed, "Enough! I'm done listening. I'm done." And for a second, silence. Then the hum returned, louder than ever, and I felt her standing behind me, hands on my shoulders. I didn't turn, couldn't. I wanted to die, but I didn't. "Aaron," she whispered, "you can't leave. Not yet." The radio slipped from my hands. It hit the ground. Static exploded into the storm, and then she vanished. For a few hours it was quiet, almost peaceful, but I knew it was temporary. I had looked into the darkness and touched it, and it had touched me back. And now, it's just a matter of time before she returns. The silence didn't last. It never does. 2 nights after the storm, I woke up to find the radio back on my desk, plugged in, turned on. I never brought it back inside. At first, I thought maybe I had done it myself. Sleepwalking, maybe. But the cord, it was melted, like it had been burned through and fused to the wall outlet. And yet, the static buzzed on, loud and alive. I sat there, staring at it in the dark, every hair on my body standing on end. The clock read 3:13 a.m., the same time my father used to wake up screaming. That number, 313, it kept showing up. On receipts, on my phone battery, once even carved into the frost on my truck windshield. And then that night, Lydia spoke again, but not from the radio, from behind me. "You shouldn't have left me in the storm." I froze. My throat went dry. I turned around, and she was there. Not fog this time, not some faint outline. Full, almost human. Her hair was wet, sticking to her face. Her dress was tattered, soaked through. Her eyes were pure white. No pupils, no emotion. Just an emptiness that felt older than time. "You can hear me now," she said. "You opened the door." I wanted to scream, to run, to do anything, but I couldn't move. The air felt thick, like syrup. My body wouldn't obey. And then she smiled again. That same slow, horrifying grin. I felt a pressure behind my eyes, like someone was pushing their fingers through my skull. I don't remember falling, but I woke up on the floor hours later. The radio was silent, and on the wall above it, written in dripping black, "Where's room 313? The next few days are a blur." Sleep meant nothing anymore. When I closed my eyes, I saw her, standing at the edge of my bed, whispering things I didn't understand. When I opened them, she was gone, but her voice stayed. Sometimes it came through the pipes, sometimes the vents, once through my phone when it wasn't even on. They buried me there. They never stopped the broadcast. "You have to finish it." I thought maybe she was tied to a location, that if I found this room 313, I could set her free. I started searching. I went through the old radio logs my father kept. He'd worked for a local AM station, one that shut down years before I was born. WQNR, small town broadcast, mostly weather and late night talk shows. But there was one folder he'd labeled Room 313. No date, no context, just recordings, old cassette tapes brittle with age. When I played the first one, I heard his voice, and hers. My father on tape. "Lydia, if you can hear me, this isn't funny anymore." Lydia, faintly, "You said you'd let me through." Then static, then screaming, then silence. I don't know how long I listened, but by the end, I realized the truth. My father hadn't been broadcasting weather reports. He'd been broadcasting her. I drove out to the remains of the station the next morning. A decaying concrete building miles outside town, buried under vines and silence. Inside, it smelled of rust and rot. The air was thick, wet, suffocating. Every step echoed. The walls were lined with soundproof foam that had rotted into fungus. And in the back, there it was, room 313. The door was still marked with my father's name. The knob was cold, like metal left in snow. Pushed it open. The room was small, maybe 10 by 10. A cracked soundboard, broken microphones, a rusted on-air sign that still flickered faintly. And in the middle of the floor, the same model of radio I had at home. I felt her before I saw her. That pressure in my skull again. That chill that makes your teeth ache. The lights dimmed. The static roared to life, louder than ever. And then she was there, standing beside the old soundboard, her face barely illuminated by the flickering on-air light. "You came back," she said. He didn't finish the broadcast. I could barely breathe. My father had warned me. He'd always said the radio could talk back if you tuned too deep into the dark. And now I knew what he meant. I stepped closer. "What do you want from me?" She tilted her head, almost childlike. To be heard. And suddenly, every speaker, every broken piece of equipment in that room came alive. Voices screamed, laughed, cried. Dozens, maybe hundreds of them, all tangled in static. And beneath them all, one voice. My father's, whispered my name. "Aaron, don't let her out." The door slammed shut. The lights went out. The air went cold enough to hurt. I stumbled back, reaching for the knob, but it wouldn't move. The static built until it was all I could hear. My vision blurred. My nose started bleeding. And then, clear as day, right beside my ear, she whispered, "You already did." When I came to, it was morning. The door was open. The radio was gone. I stumbled outside, shaking, half blind from the light. The building was empty, completely silent, but I could still hear the static. Not in my ears, not in my head, but under everything, like the world itself was humming. When I got home, my house was freezing. My breath fogged the air. The lights flickered, and the radio, the one that had vanished, was sitting on the kitchen table, clean, polished, perfectly still. And on its dial, etched in red, was a single phrase. The broadcast never ends. To room 313, I should have run. I should have left the radio, left the town, left everything behind. But I didn't. Curiosity, obsession, maybe stupidity. Whatever it was, I stayed. And that's when it got worse. The radio never left my house. I never saw it being placed there, never heard footsteps. I woke up one morning to find it on the kitchen counter, humming quietly, static filling the corners of the room. Every night, Lydia came back, sometimes at the end of the hallway, sometimes standing behind the shower curtain, sometimes, I swear, inside the mirror, grinning. I began to hear voices even when the radio was off. They didn't whisper anymore. They shouted, screamed, they argued. Hundreds of voices overlapping, incoherent yet purposeful. Aaron, finish it. Turn it back on. Why did you leave me? I tried to block it out. Tried wearing headphones. Tried moving the radio outside into the yard. Tried burning it. Nothing worked. The static followed me. The whispers followed me. Even when I left the house, I started hearing things on my phone. Messages I didn't send. Calls from numbers I didn't know. Voicemail boxes filled with static and laughter. Sometimes the recordings were of me sleeping. Sometimes of me talking. But not my words. Their words. Commands. Warnings. Please. One night, I was awake for hours trying to sleep, trying to ignore it. But then the voice spoke clearly. Aaron, you belong to the broadcast now. I froze. My blood ran cold. My room, once familiar, felt alien. The walls seemed to pulse in rhythm with the static. My bed sagged under a weight I couldn't see. Then I heard footsteps, close, circling me. She was here, Lydia, her presence pressing down like water. I dared to open my eyes. She was sitting on the edge of the bed, wet hair plastered to her face, hollow eyes staring straight into mine. Why are you afraid? She asked. I didn't answer, couldn't. I was paralyzed, every nerve screaming, every thought screaming, every muscle locked. You heard them, she said. All of them. Every broadcast, every scream, every whisper. You're mine now. I don't know how long I sat there. Maybe minutes, maybe hours. The next day, my mind started slipping. I couldn't tell reality from hallucination. Every shadow in my room had a voice. Every reflection whispered my name. Every radio, every speaker, every phone. It was all alive. And the tape recordings I'd made, they started changing. I would play them back, and new whispers would appear. Commands I didn't hear before. Voices of my father screaming, pleading, warning. Aaron, it never ends. Don't listen. I began to hallucinate her everywhere. The streets, the store, the park, she was there. Watching, waiting, silently grinning. I stopped leaving my house. Stopped answering calls. Stopped going outside. But the radio never stopped. It hummed. It whispered. It laughed. And one night, I realized it wasn't just the radio. It was me. Every thought I had, every word I spoke, every heartbeat. All of it pulsed with static, with whispers. I couldn't think my own thoughts anymore. I couldn't speak my own words. It was Lydia, it was the broadcast, it was the radio. Aaron, you're finally ready, she said. I screamed, but no sound came out. The hallucinations grew worse. The walls bled shadows. Mirrors reflected not my face, but hers. The air grew thick, unbreathable. Every night she drew closer. Every day my sanity slipped further. I tried to destroy the radio again. I tried smashing it, burning it, drowning it. Nothing worked. Every attempt ended the same. I would wake up, exhausted, broken, and the radio would be waiting for me in the same spot, humming softly, static leaking into the air like fog. And the whispers, they never stopped. Aaron, finish it. You know what you must do. I didn't know. I didn't understand. But I felt it, deep in my chest. The pull of something ancient, relentless, patient. Something that had been waiting for me my whole life. I started writing again, trying to capture the voices, trying to leave a record in case I didn't survive. But the voices would overwrite me. They would speak through my hand. Words I never thought, thoughts I never had. And the last entry I wrote that night, I don't even remember. Only the words remain, scratched onto the page in shaky, frantic handwriting. She is everywhere. I am nothing. The broadcast never sleeps. She waits. I am hers. I don't know how long I've been trapped in this loop. Days? Weeks? Months? Time doesn't exist the way it used to. Every night is the same. The static hums. The whispers crawl under my skin. And Lydia, she's closer now than ever. The radio sits at the end of my bed, always plugged in, alive, waiting. She appears in every reflection. Every shadow moves like her. She's patient, deliberate, never leaving, never tired, never silent. Last night, I tried one last thing. I thought I could confront her, end it, destroy the source. I took the radio into the garage, poured gasoline over it, and struck a match. The flames roared. Smoke filled the room. I thought I'd finally free myself. But she appeared in the fire. Not a hallucination. Not a trick of my mind. She was real. She was there. "You can't destroy me," she whispered, her voice rising over the crackle of the flames. "You belong to the broadcast now." The fire burned my hands. I screamed. The flames licked my face. And yet, she was unharmed. She reached through the smoke, her fingers brushing my cheek. Ice, sharp, cutting. The radio exploded. Glass and sparks flew. The room went dark. I should have been free. I wasn't, because the moment the explosion ended, I heard it. Static, faint, distant. And then my own voice. "Aaron, you shouldn't have left me alone." I stumbled backward, my chest heaving. The walls of the garage stretched and warped. Shadows elongated. My reflection in a broken mirror showed her face, not mine. And then I realized the broadcast isn't the radio. It's me. Every thought, every heartbeat, every movement. Part of her. Part of Lydia. Part of this endless loop. I tried to scream. My mouth opened, but nothing came out. Only static. Only whispers. I don't know who I am anymore. Maybe I never did. The last thing I remember, before the world shifted completely, she said, "Welcome home," and then silence. Now, sometimes I hear the faint hum in my dreams. Sometimes, when the wind howls, I swear I can hear static creeping through the walls of houses. Radios turning on by themselves, voices whispering names. Maybe it's me. Maybe it's her. Maybe it's you. The broadcast never ends. It never sleeps. It waits. And one day, if you listen too closely, it might find you.
Good evening, listener. Welcome to Midnight Radio Horror. I'm glad you found your way here tonight. Maybe through the sound of rain, maybe through the algorithm, or maybe something darker led you to this frequency. Either way, you're here now. So let's make this a night to remember. Before we begin, take a moment to relax. Turn off the lights. Let the rain outside take over your thoughts. Get comfortable under that blanket. The world can wait till morning. And while you're here, drop a comment and tell me where you're tuning in from. We've got listeners joining from all over, from foggy London apartments, midnight bus rides through New York, quiet rooms in Dhaka, lonely cabins in Oregon. Tonight, you're not alone. You're part of something much bigger, a community that listens together in the dark. Now, let's begin tonight's story. It's called The Missing Motel Room. And trust me, after this, you'll never look at roadside motels the same way again. I was driving through Nevada, somewhere between Reno and nowhere, when the storm hit. Thunder rolled across the desert like an endless growl, and the rain came down so hard it looked like the sky had cracked open. I'd been on the road for 10 hours, trying to reach my brother's place before sunrise. But when my headlights started flickering and the fuel gauge dipped below empty, I knew I had to stop. That's when I saw it. A flickering red neon sign in the distance. Vacancy. Just one word, glowing through the rain. The building behind it was small, old, and barely standing. The kind of roadside motel you'd only find in nightmares or forgotten postcards. Still, I pulled in. Inside the office was a man, maybe in his 70s, wearing a faded uniform and a tired smile. His skin looked like paper, and his voice rasped like someone who hadn't spoken in weeks. "Late night for you," he said. "Yeah," I laughed nervously. "Just need a bed and a dry roof." He slid an old brass key across the counter. It was labeled room 103. "Cash only," he said, "and keep your door locked. We've had incidents." I didn't ask what he meant by that. I just nodded, paid him, and made my way down the dark hallway. The air smelled strange, like mold and old rain. The carpet was sticky under my shoes. Every few steps, the light above me would flicker. When I finally reached room 103, I felt a weird sense of relief. I just wanted to sleep. The room looked normal enough. A bed, a dresser, a TV from the 90s. But there was something odd about it. The wallpaper didn't line up near the corner, like someone had ripped it and tried to glue it back. And the mirror across from the bed had a faint handprint on it. I plugged in my phone, turned off the light, and told myself I'd laugh about this in the morning. But that's when I heard it. A sound from the wall behind the bed. 3 soft knocks. I froze. Then a whisper, so faint I thought I was imagining it. It said, "Don't open the door." I sat up immediately. My heart was pounding. I looked toward the door. It was locked. I checked the bathroom. Empty. The sound had stopped. Maybe it was the storm. Maybe it was the pipes. But when I tried to lie back down, I noticed something that made my skin crawl. There was light under the door. Someone was standing outside. I saw the shadow, still, human, unmoving. And then, the doorknob started to turn. I froze, staring at the doorknob, turning slowly, almost taunting me. My hands shook as I reached for the bedpost, trying to steady myself. But before I could react, the knob stopped. Silence. I swallowed hard and whispered, "Who's there?" No answer, just a faint hum of the rain outside, summoning what little courage I had. I grabbed the key and slid the bolt open. I cracked the door just a fraction and peered out. Nothing. The hallway was empty. The flickering lights cast shadows that danced like they were alive. I stepped out cautiously, each creak of the floorboards echoing in the quiet. Then I heard it. A voice. Soft. Deliberate. Coming from inside the wall beside me. Elliot. My blood ran cold. It knew my name. I pressed my ear against the wall, but it was solid. No vents. No hollow space. Nothing except the voice whispering again. "Why did you leave me?" I stumbled back, heart hammering. For a moment, I thought I might be losing my mind. But then I noticed the faint outline of a door in the wall. Not painted over. Not part of the architecture. Just there. It wasn't on the motel map. It wasn't in the ledger. It was a door that shouldn't exist. I reached out. The wood was cold, damp, almost alive. A shiver ran up my spine. I twisted the handle, and it opened with a slow groan. Inside, darkness. Thick, black darkness that seemed to swallow the flickering light from the hallway. I took a step in. The air smelled of rain and something else, something old like dust and decay mixed together. Then I heard it again, a soft, dragging sound, moving toward me from the far corner. I froze. My mind screamed at me to run, but my body wouldn't obey. Then I saw it, a figure, hunched, motionless, just barely visible in the darkness. I couldn't make out a face, but I knew, somehow, it was looking at me. And then it spoke. Why did you leave me? The words were closer now, almost at my ear, but no one was there. I stumbled backward, slamming the door shut behind me. My hand was shaking, my heart racing like it would burst. I leaned against the wall and tried to catch my breath. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that shadow moving, heard that voice whispering, felt those fingers brushing against my skin. By morning, I was the first out the door. I didn't even think to ask about breakfast. When I looked back from the parking lot, the motel seemed normal again. Sign flickering weakly, windows dark, lobby empty, but I knew the truth. Room 103 wasn't just a room, and the door in the wall was waiting for someone to come back. I thought I could leave once the sun rose. I walked back to my truck, hoping that daylight would make everything normal. But when I stepped outside, the parking lot had changed. The asphalt was cracked in places it hadn't been before. The truck I had parked the night before wasn't there. In its place was another car, old, rusted, like it had been sitting there for decades. I ran back toward the motel entrance. The door was still locked from the inside. I rapped on it, called for the old man at the front desk. No response. Then I noticed something even stranger. The motel had grown. The hallway I had walked the night before, it stretched farther now. More rooms than I remembered. Rooms with numbers that hadn't existed before. Rooms with windows that looked into walls or into total darkness. I walked down one of the new hallways. Each step felt heavier, like I was sinking into something unseen. I passed a door, room 106. But as I walked past it, I caught movement in the reflection of the old mirror in the hall. Someone or something was inside the room. I stopped, holding my breath. The door was closed, but I could hear it breathing. Slow, wet, deliberate. I couldn't see it. Couldn't make out anything but the sound. And then it whispered, "Elliot, you shouldn't have come back." Panic hit me full force. I ran to the end of the hall. Every room I passed seemed to shift slightly. Numbers changing, doors disappearing, then reappearing behind me. I realized then, I wasn't just a motel. I was trapped inside it. The walls themselves seemed alive, breathing, moving, watching. The old key in my pocket felt heavy, almost hot, as if it was trying to warn me. I ran back to room 103. Maybe I could hide there. Maybe it would protect me. But the door wasn't there. Only a blank stretch of wall. I pounded my fist against it, screaming for help, for anyone, for the old man, for the storm, for the rain, for anything. Nothing answered. And then I heard it, that voice right behind me. "Why did you leave me?" It was closer now, almost inside my head. And I knew. I had to face it. I turned slowly, my heart hammering, expecting nothing. But there it was, a shadow, hunched and malformed, just beyond where the hallway light could reach. It wasn't human, not entirely. Its shape wavered, like smoke caught in a draft, edges dissolving into the walls. I could feel its presence before I even saw it, a weight pressing down on my chest, cold air brushing my skin, the smell like wet earth and decay filling my nostrils. "Why did you leave me?" the voice hissed again, but louder this time, almost a roar inside my skull. I stumbled backward, nearly tripping over the warped carpet. My hand landed on the wall, and it felt wrong. The surface pulsed beneath my palm, warm and almost breathing. I didn't leave anyone. I stammered, voice cracking. I didn't know. The shadow shifted closer. I could see faint glimmers where eyes should have been, empty sockets glowing dimly red. Its mouth opened, and a low groan rolled out, wet and rasping, like someone trying to speak underwater. My instincts screamed at me to run, but every hallway I looked down seemed to stretch further, twisting impossibly, turning back on itself. Doors appeared and disappeared. Numbers changed mid-step. The motel wasn't just a building anymore. It was alive. I ran blindly, turning corner after corner, trying to put distance between myself and the shadow. But it followed. I could hear its breath dragging across the floors behind me. Occasionally, it let out that same whisper, calling my name over and over. Elliot, Elliot, why did you leave me? I reached what I thought was the lobby, but the desk wasn't there. The old man wasn't there. The lights flickered out, and the rain outside sounded distant, muffled. I was trapped in an endless gray void, the motel stretching forever in all directions. My mind raced. I remember the key in my pocket, room 103. I had to return. Maybe hiding there was my only chance. I turned down a narrow hall, stepping cautiously, listening for the sound of breathing. Then I heard it, dragging, heavy footsteps right behind me. Faster now. I glanced back. The shadow moved impossibly fast, morphing as it came. It grew taller, then shorter, then stretched sideways. Its form seemed to mimic my fears, twisting into every nightmare I had ever had. I ran, slipping on the wet carpet, cutting my hands on the wallpaper peeling from the walls. Somehow, I made it to a stairwell. I bolted up 2 steps at a time, my lungs burning. At the top, a door, unmarked, glowing faintly. I pushed it open and found myself inside a small, dimly lit room. It was room 103. The bed looked untouched. The TV buzzed weakly and the lamp flickered. Relief washed over me. Maybe this was safe. But then I noticed the mirror. The handprint had changed. Not just one hand, multiple prints, overlapping, smeared into one another, reaching out across the glass. And I realized something terrifying. The shadow wasn't alone. All of the rooms, all of the walls were filled with echoes of people who had stayed here before me. All trapped, all whispering, waiting. I sank onto the bed, trying to steady my breathing. Every instinct screamed to get out, but the key felt heavy in my pocket, almost like it was pulling me back, tethering me to this place. And then the whisper returned, louder than ever, as if standing right beside me. Elliot, why did you leave me? I grabbed the key, clenching it in my fist, and whispered back, trembling. I didn't know. I didn't know anyone was here. Please, leave me alone. The shadow surged forward, the room filling with cold mist. I could see shapes forming, faces contorted in pain, screaming silently, reaching toward me through the walls. I backed into the corner. My legs refused to move. My heart raced so fast it felt like it might explode. I realized then that the motel wasn't just a building. It was a trap, a feeding ground, a place that remembered every guest who had ever walked its halls. I spent what felt like hours there, pressed against the wall, listening to the whispers and the dragging feet, hearing my name repeated over and over in voices I couldn't place. Some male, some female, some too old, some too young. When I finally dared to look up, the shadow was gone. For a moment, silence reigned. But then, from the corner of the room, I saw it, a faint glow from under the door. Room 104, the next room, and I knew instinctively that if I opened that door, I would see it again. I wanted to run. I wanted to escape, but something told me I couldn't, because whatever haunted Greywater Motel, it was patient, and it had been waiting for me a very long time. I couldn't stay in room 103. The whispers, the cold, the sense that the walls themselves were alive. It was suffocating. I had to move to find a way out to escape this nightmare. I pushed open the door to the hallway. Immediately, I realized something terrifying. The hallway was longer than it had been before. The lights flickered, and doors I hadn't seen before now lined the walls. Numbers that shouldn't exist glowed faintly. 110, 111, 112. I took a cautious step forward, the carpet squishing under my boots as if it were wet. The air was heavy, almost solid. I could feel it pressing against my chest, making each breath a labor. And then I heard it, faint at first, a chorus of whispers from every door. Not just one voice, but dozens. Hundreds. All trapped, all waiting, all forgotten. I swallowed hard, my throat dry. Hello. I called out, voice trembling. Is anyone there? The whispers surged, louder now, overlapping, unintelligible. The walls seemed to pulse with sound. I stumbled backward, nearly falling, my hand landing on a door marked 107. And then I saw movement behind the frosted glass. A shadow pressed against it, hunched, distorted, reaching outward. I froze. My heart thundered. The shadow tilted its head, and I heard the whisper, familiar, malicious. "Elliot, why did you leave me?" I tried to run, but the hallway shifted. The floor stretched farther than it should, corners bending at impossible angles. Each door I passed seemed to vanish behind me, replaced by more doors, all closed, all hiding something I didn't want to see. I had to keep moving. Somewhere there had to be an exit. I tried every door. Each one led to another corridor, another hallway, another trap. Room numbers twisted in sequences that made no sense. I felt like I was moving, but never getting closer to the lobby, to my truck, to the outside. And then I heard footsteps. Slow, deliberate, not mine. I stopped, straining to hear. The sound echoed off the walls, coming closer. I couldn't see it, but I could feel its gaze, heavy and hot on my neck. "Elliot," the voice hissed again, now several voices overlapping, layered over one another. "You shouldn't have come back. You shouldn't have left." The whispering intensified, voices clawing at my mind, pressing memories into my skull. Memories I didn't have. Faces flashed behind my eyelids. People I didn't know, people screaming, faces pressed against walls, mouths moving silently. I ran down a hallway that seemed endless. Doors blurred together, numbers twisted, impossible math unfolding before me. I turned a corner, and the walls seemed to breathe, pulsing in and out like lungs. I stumbled and fell. My hands hit the carpet, wet. I looked down. Red. Thick, sticky. Not mine. I gagged, scrambled to my feet. The shadow loomed at the end of the hallway now. Taller, stretching upward, edges dissolving and reforming like smoke. It moved silently, almost gliding, yet each step echoed like thunder. I could hear its voice in my head now, every word a blade of ice. "Elliot, why did you leave me?" I ran faster, turning corner after corner, but the hallway never ended. The exit, my truck, the front door, all illusions. I realized then, this place wasn't following the rules of reality. The motel was alive, and it had claimed me. I tried to scream, but the walls swallowed my voice. I pounded on doors, windows, anything, but they resisted my hands. The whispers surged again, incoherent, but full of pain, anger, and longing. Then I felt it brush past me, something cold, wet, and solid moving right next to my shoulder. I spun, but nothing was there, only shadows, stretching and twisting in impossible angles. I backed into a wall. The shadow manifested behind me, or maybe inside me. My reflection in a cracked mirror showed a dozen faces screaming silently from every direction. I realized something worse. The key in my pocket, room 103, it pulsed with heat, almost like it was alive. A tether, a promise, a trap. I had no choice but to follow it. I ran blindly toward a faint glow at the end of a corridor. The key burned in my hand, guiding me toward room 103. Each step felt like hours. The shadows whispered, the walls breathed, the floor squished like it was alive. And finally, I saw it. The door of room 103. Just as I remembered it. Ordinary. Waiting. I didn't know if I could stay safe here, but I didn't care anymore. I pushed it open, slipped inside, and slammed the door behind me. The room was silent. Too silent. The lamp flickered weakly. The bed looked untouched, but I could feel eyes on me. I could hear whispers beneath the hum of the TV. The key pulsed in my pocket. A constant reminder. The motel wasn't done with me. And I realized I was trapped. Not just in a building. Not just in a room. I was trapped inside something older, larger, and far more patient than I had ever imagined. The shadows would wait. The whispers would call. And the next step I took would bring me closer to them. I stayed in room 103 for what felt like hours, but the motel didn't let me rest. The whispers seeped from the walls, thick and relentless. Each one dragged memories, faces, and voices into my mind. I couldn't think straight. I couldn't breathe properly. My hands were clammy, my legs numb. Eventually, I realized hiding wouldn't save me. The shadow, the whispers, the pulse of the building, it was all connected. I had to understand the rules if I wanted to survive. I left the room. The hallway stretched farther than I remembered, doors twisting like vines around me. Some doors were open, showing empty rooms. Some were closed, radiating a cold so deep it made my teeth chatter. And some had things inside them. I saw one room, door slightly ajar, and inside a figure crouched, shaking. Its face was pale, wet with tears. It looked at me with hollow eyes, lips moving silently. Then it disappeared as soon as I blinked. The shadow followed me, a constant pressure on my back. I spoke aloud, trying to reason with it. What do you want? What are the rules? The whisper came again, this time directly into my head. Elliot, the rules are simple. The motel remembers. The motel watches. You cannot leave unless. The sentence trailed off. I tried to follow the sound, but it dissolved into static. I explored cautiously, trying door after door. I learned a few things quickly. The rooms aren't stable. Room numbers shift. A door that was 106 could become 110 if you walk too far. The rooms seem alive, rearranging themselves. The walls listen. I tried speaking, yelling, pleading. Everything echoed back as whispers. Sometimes the voices repeated my exact words. Sometimes they twisted them into mockery. The shadow chooses. It doesn't attack randomly. It observes. It waits. Then it acts. And when it moves toward you, you feel a presence in your chest. A pressure like you're sinking into the floor. I understood one more horrifying truth. The motel keeps people here. Forever. I need to test it. I opened a door marked 108 and stepped inside. The room was empty, almost. The air was warmer, heavier. It smelled of wetwood. On the bed, a note. You cannot leave until you face what you left behind. I froze. The words were written in a handwriting I knew my own. I tried to leave the room. The door wouldn't budge. I pushed harder, kicking. It opened only slightly, enough for me to see the hallway had changed. The walls were covered in mirrors now. Not ordinary mirrors. Mirrors showing me memories I didn't want to see. I saw myself in different places, laughing with people I didn't remember, leaving someone behind, running from responsibility, ignoring warnings. And in each reflection, the shadow lurked behind me, always reaching, always whispering. Why did you leave me? I stumbled backward, heart racing. The motel wasn't just a trap. It was a reckoning. I realized that each room, each reflection, each whisper was forcing me to confront something. Some failure, some regret, some guilt. And until I did, the shadow would stay. The motel would watch. I would never leave. I sank onto the bed, exhausted, feeling the pulse of the key in my pocket. It throbbed like a heartbeat. I whispered to myself, I didn't know. I didn't know anyone was here. Please let me go. The shadow appeared then, stretching through the doorway, reaching toward me. Its voice, layered and wet, echoed in my skull. You must face it. You must remember. Only then may you leave. I had no choice. I had to step into the nightmare. I left room 103 again, following the whispers. They led me down corridors that seemed endless. Every door I passed showed pieces of my past. Decisions I regretted, moments I had ignored, people I had abandoned. And always the shadow followed, watching, waiting, judging. At some point, I lost track of time. Hours? Days. The motel didn't care. The storm outside had returned, or maybe it had never stopped. Rain pelted the windows, soft at first, then violent. And then I heard it again, the whisper that had haunted me since the night I arrived. Elliot, why did you leave me? This time I responded, trembling but determined. I don't know. I don't know who I left, but I will find out. I will face it. I swear it. The shadow hesitated. For the first time, it seemed to pause, almost listening. I didn't know what would happen next. But one thing was clear. The Greywater Motel wasn't just a building. It was a mirror, a living memory, and it would not let me leave until I confronted whatever I had left behind. I braced myself. The next room I opened would force me to see the truth. And I knew Once I stepped inside, there would be no turning back. I hesitated at the door ahead. The key throbbed in my pocket like a heartbeat, urging me forward. The hallway stretched endlessly behind me, doors multiplying, shadows flickering in every corner. My legs trembled, but I had no choice. I had to step inside. The door read 109. I turned the knob, half expecting it to resist. It didn't. The room was dark, colder than anywhere else in the hotel. The lamp flickered weakly, casting long, twisted shadows on the walls. The air smelled of damp wood and old rain. And then I saw it, a figure crouched in the corner. Its skin was pale, almost translucent, eyes wide and empty. Its limbs were twisted unnaturally, like it had been broken and rearranged over and over. I froze. My mouth went dry. The key pulsed so violently it felt like it was burning through my pocket. The figure raised its head. It spoke. Why did you leave me? It was the same whisper, the same voice that had haunted me since I arrived, but now it was alive. Solid. Real. I don't know. I stammered. I didn't know anyone was here. I didn't know you existed. The figure lurched forward impossibly fast, and I stumbled back, crashing into bed. The shadow behind me, my constant companion, swirled into the room, merging with the figure. Its form shifted, now humanoid, now monstrous, a living nightmare born of my guilt and fear. I waited. It hissed, voice layered, echoing, dripping into my mind. I waited, and you left me. My chest tightened. I realized then, this was someone, something I had left behind in my life. A friend? A stranger? Someone I had ignored? I couldn't remember. My memories blurred under the pressure. Fear. I didn't know. I gasped. I would never leave you if I knew. The shadow recoiled slightly. For the first time, I sensed hesitation. The entity moved closer, not attacking, but observing, testing. Its presence pressed against my skull, forcing me to remember. And then I saw it. A memory. I was younger, standing in a rain-soaked alley. A man collapsed against a wall. I had walked past him, pretending I didn't see, pretending I was too busy, too tired, too selfish to care. The image hit me like a punch to the chest. I had left him there. He had waited. And now, here he was. The shadow dissolved, leaving the figure solid, almost human, but distorted, broken by the motel's power. I'm sorry. I whispered, tears streaming down my face. I didn't know. I should have stayed. I should have helped. The figure paused. Its breathing slowed. The oppressive cold receded slightly. The whispers from the walls softened. You must remember every one, the figure said. Only then may you leave. I nodded, barely able to speak. Understand. I will face them all. The memory faded, leaving me alone in the room. The shadow lingered faintly, watching, waiting. I stepped back into the hallway. The doors had shifted again, numbering impossible, walls twisting. I realized the motel was testing me, preparing me for the others. Each room, each figure, each whisper would force me to confront every choice, every regret, every abandonment in my life. The key pulsed again, drawing me toward the next door. I could hear faint whispers behind every door I passed. Snippets of conversations, laughter, cries for help, all distorted, all calling for me. I understood the rules more clearly now. I could not ignore the past. I could not run. I had to face each entity the motel conjured for my own life, or be trapped forever. I approached the next door, marked 110. The whispers grew louder, overlapping into a chorus, demanding attention. The shadow shifted at my side, larger now, coiling and uncoiling like smoke, as if preparing the next test. I took a deep breath and turned the knob. Whatever awaited me inside, I knew it would be worse, but I had no choice. I had to face it, because if I didn't, Grey Water Motel would consume me, like it had consumed the others before me. I stepped into room 110, and the air hit me like a wave, cold, damp, and thick with the scent of something I couldn't name. My skin crawled immediately. The room looked normal at first. A bed, a dresser, a cracked lamp flickering weakly. But as I let my eyes adjust, I realized it wasn't empty. Not really. The walls were covered in photographs. Hundreds of them. Faces staring back at me. Some familiar, some strange, some contorted in fear. The eyes seemed to follow me wherever I moved. And then I noticed them. Faces I recognized. Friends I had forgotten. Strangers I had passed by without helping. People whose lives I had touched and abandoned. Each photo flickered like it was alive, pulsing as if breathing. A whisper came from the far corner. "Why did you leave us?" I turned and saw figures emerging from the shadows. Not one, not 2 dozens. People from my past, twisted and broken, reaching toward me. Some moved normally. Others moved unnaturally, limbs bent at wrong angles, crawling, sliding, hovering. I stumbled back, almost tripping over the edge of the bed. I didn't know. I didn't know anyone would. I would never leave anyone. I shouted, voice cracking. The shadow appeared behind me, larger than ever, a smoldering mass of black smoke and red eyes. It pulsed as if alive, feeding on my fear. One figure stepped forward, a girl I had seen as a child, crying in the rain outside my old apartment. I had walked past her that night. I had been too busy, too self-absorbed, too scared to help. Now she hovered, pale and wet, reaching for me with hands that almost dissolved into mist. I remember. I gasped, stumbling back against the wall. I remember now. I shouldn't have left you. The shadow hissed, almost in delight, the others whispering, moaning, calling out in unison. Face us, face us, face us. The walls started to move. The photos shifted, the faces screaming silently, some reaching through the paper, hands stretching toward me. The room seemed alive, breathing, watching, judging. I realized then that the motel didn't just trap people physically. It trapped memories, regrets, and guilt. Every abandoned face, every forgotten promise, every ignored cry, all collected here, all feeding the shadows. Tears ran down my face as I confronted the first memory fully. I am sorry. I screamed. I didn't know. I won't forget you. The girl stepped forward closer, her hands brushing my arm. And then she vanished, dissolving into a mist that the shadow absorbed. The other figures followed, fading one by one as I acknowledged them, spoke their names, remembered their pain, and accepted my role in their suffering. The whispers slowed. The air grew lighter, the cold receding slightly. The room felt empty. I sank to the floor, exhausted. Every memory faced, every ghost confronted, but I knew there were more rooms, more entities, more shadows. The key in my pocket pulsed, pulling me toward the next door, 111. I had no idea what awaited me there. The hallway stretched endlessly, doors multiplying like a maze. Shadows flitted in every corner, whispers overlapping, calling my name, repeating every mistake I had ever made. I realized something terrifying. This motel wasn't just testing me. It was remaking me. Every fear, every regret, every abandonment. It was forcing me to relive it, face it, and either accept it or be consumed. I took a shaky breath and approached the next door. The whispers rose to a crescendo. The shadow moved alongside me, larger than ever, coiling like smoke, its red eyes fixed on me. I gripped the key tightly, feeling its heat, its pulse. Whatever awaited me behind this door, I had to face it, because if I failed, I would join the others. Another forgotten face, another whisper in the walls, another shadow feeding on fear. I turned the knob and stepped inside room